Billy Bunter's Postal Order by Frank Richards. Performed by Martin Jarvis. Mr. Quelch frowned. His frown was directed towards the fattest member of his form. Every fellow in the Greyfriars Remove, excepting Billy Bunter, noted that frown on the form master's severe brow, and sat up and took notice accordingly. Quelch's frown in that form-room had almost the effect of Jove's nod on Olympus. If it did not exactly shake the heavens, at least it warned all concerned that the thunder was about to roll. In which circumstances nobody in the Remove form wanted to draw Quelch's attention to himself. Harry Wharton, who had a football list under his desk, dismissed it from mind. Bob Cherry, who had been thinking of projecting an ink ball at Lord Mauleverer, abandoned the idea. Frank Nugent, who'd been whispering to Johnny Bull, and Huree Jamset Ram Singh, became as dumb as an oyster. Only Billy Bunter remained regardless. Bunter, apparently, couldn't care less. That was not because Billy Bunter was a fellow of tremendous nerve, reckless of his form master's frown. It was because Bunter didn't see the signs of gathering wrath. There were two reasons for that. The first was that the owl of the Remove couldn't see very far anyway, even with the aid of his big spectacles. The second was that Bunter's attention was fixed not on Quelch or on the lesson, but on the form-room clock. Every 4 or 5 minutes, at least, Bunter's eyes and spectacles swivelled round to the clock. For some reason, known only to himself, Billy Bunter was unusually and particularly anxious that morning for break to arrive. Now, once more, those eyes and spectacles were concentrated on the clock, while the thunder grew and intensified in Quelch's brow. And then, as if to add the finishing touch to Quelch's wrath, Bunter, still happily unconscious of the signs of stormy weather, whispered to Skinner, "I say, Skinner, what's the time?" Skinner made no reply. He, if not Bunter, was aware of the frown and the glint in the gimlet eye. "I can't quite make out the beastly thing from here," whispered Bunter. "I say, is it 22? Skinner was still dumb. Mark Linley was on con. He went on construing the Latin exercise. But Quelch's attention was no longer fixed on the best scholar in his form, whose translation always gave him satisfaction. It had wandered to Bunter and stayed there. "I say, Stott, is it nearly 1:45? whispered Bunter. Stott, like Skinner, seemed both deaf and dumb. Peter Todd, though well aware of Quelch's gorgon-like stare, ventured upon a warning whisper. "Shut up, you fat ass!" "Oh, really, Toddy? I say, what's the time?" Mr. Quelch breathed hard, and he breathed deep. Not only was Bunter giving no attention whatever to the lesson, but he was actually whispering in class, right under the glare of the gimlet eyes. "That will do, Linley," said Mr. Quelch. Mark sat down. "Bunter?" "Oh, yes, sir?" Bunter, thus reminded of the irritating existence of his form master, turned his spectacles on Mr. Quelch, and became aware of a thunderous frown. "Oh, I wasn't talking, sir." "During this lesson," said Mr. Quelch, "you have given no attention whatever, Bunter." "Oh, yes, sir. You have been continually looking at the clock, Bunter." "Oh, no, sir. I only looked to see whether it had stopped." "The clock has not stopped, Bunter. It is exactly 20 minutes to 11, said Mr. Quelch. "Oh, thank you, sir." Bunter's face brightened. Only 5 minutes more of Quelch's tosh, and then— "You appear very anxious about the time, Bunter." "Yes, sir. I mean, no, sir. No, I was only wondering whether there was a letter for me in the rack, sir. I'm expecting a postal order, sir," stammered Bunter. "Oh, my hat," murmured Bob Cherry. There was a general grin, and even a sound of chuckling in the Remove. Every fellow in the Remove, if not every fellow at Greyfriars School, had heard of the postal order Bunter expected. Bunter lived in a perpetual state of expecting a postal order, which seldom or never materialized. Apparently, on this particular morning, Bunter had some particular reason for supposing that long-felt expectation was to be realized at last. Mr. Quelch gave his form a glance, which checked every sign of merriment on the spot. Every face became serious at once. "Bunter!" Quelch seemed rather to bite off the name than utter it. "Such matters should be entirely dismissed from mind during class."
Oh, really? Oh, yes, sir. Certainly.
You will now construe, Bunter, said Mr. Quelch, in a voice like a grinding of a saw. And if your construe is not satisfactory, Bunter, you will remain in the form room during break and write out the lesson.
Oh, crikey,
gasped Bunter. Do you hear me, Bunter? Construe, rapped Mr. Quelch.
Oh, yes, sir. I've just missed the place, sir.
You will go on from Fragrantia Mela.
Oh, yes, thank you, sir.
Billy Bunter blinked at his book and found that Fragrantia Mela was followed by a speech of the pious Aeneas, O fortunati quorum iam moenia surgunt. Even Billy Bunter must have known that yam, spelt J-A-M, did not mean the same thing in Latin as in English. In English, jam was a noun dear to Bunter, denoting an article to which he was deeply and sincerely attached. In Latin, it should have been translated as already. But William George Bunter's fat mind was in a state of confusion, and, as the sentence, simple as it was, presented no meaning to him, he plunged recklessly, hit or miss.
Oh, happy ones, whose jam...
Whose what?
Quelch almost roared.
Whose jam?
Howled nearly all the remove.
Silence! Bunter, you will stay in during break and write out the lesson. You will go on, Wharton.
Harry Wharton went on. Billy Bunter sat overwhelmed with dismay, thinking of the postal order in that letter in the rack, of the attractive edibles in the tuck shop, so near and yet so far.
Oh, law!
breathed Billy Bunter. There was a happy stirring in the remove. The clock, which Billy Bunter had watched so anxiously during that lesson, now indicated 10:45. Quelch was dismissing the remove for morning break. "Rough luck, old fat bean," murmured Bob Cherry as he passed the dismal and dolorous owl.
"I say, you fellows,"
whispered Bunter. He blinked at Quelch, who seemed busy with papers at his desk.
"I say, think I could dodge out?"
"I wouldn't risk it, old porpoise." Bob shook his head.
"I think I'll chance it."
Bunter heaved himself to his feet. Surely it was possible that the gimlet eye might miss him going out with the crowd.
Bunter!
The fat owl had taken 2 steps when that dreaded voice fell on his fat ears.
"I told you to remain in the form room and write out the lesson, Bunter,"
said Mr. Quelch, eyeing him grimly from his high desk.
"Oh, yes, sir."
"Yet you appear to have been going out, Bunter."
"Oh, no, sir. No, I just got out because I had cramp in my foot, sir."
"You will resume your place, Bunter."
Quelch gave him a look. It was such a look as the fabled Gorgon might have bestowed on its victims. Billy Bunter collapsed into his place. Having petrified Bunter with that look, Quelch dropped his eyes again on the papers at his desk. But Bunter remained petrified only for a moment. The gimlet eye being off him, he made an almost frantic sign to Bob Cherry, who was heading for the door with the rest, but casting a sympathetic glance behind him as he went. Bunter was whispering now.
Bob, old chap, look in the rack and see if there's a letter for me, will you?"
"Right-ho," agreed Bob.
"Get it for me and chuck it in at the window,"
breathed Bunter.
"Quelch will be gone in a minute."
"Okay," assented Bob.
"Cherry,"
came a grinding voice.
"Oh, yes, sir."
"You may leave the form room."
Certainly, sir." Bob Cherry followed his friends out.
"You will now write out the lesson, Bunter."
"Oh, yes, sir,"
said Bunter. He was looking more cheerful now. He dipped his pen in the ink and started. Of course it was rotten, in fact definitely putrid, to have to sit there and write out Virgil instead of hurtling rackwards and grabbing that precious letter. But there was comfort in the knowledge that Bob Cherry would get the letter from the rack and chuck it in at the form room window. Bunter was going to grab it up, and though he wouldn't be able to expend the postal order in tuck during break, at least he would know that it had come and would have it in his fat hands. Actually, really and truly, his Uncle Carter had promised him £1. For once, Billy Bunter's postal order was not merely a figment of a hopeful imagination. They made jokes in the remove about Billy Bunter's postal order. Fellows would ask him whether it was the same one he'd been expecting when he was in the second form. They would ask him whether it had grown whiskers in the post, having been so long on the way.
Well, now they would jolly well see.
Bunter scribbled Latin, dropped blots, and added smudges, impatiently waiting for Quelch to go. Quelch generally went out after the remove, Brake being probably as welcome to the form master as to the form. It was unusual for him to remain in the form room, but on this occasion he seemed very slow in getting a move on. Bunter incessantly cast blinks at Quelch. Would the beast never go? It looked as if he wouldn't. Slowly, and with horror, it dawned on Billy Bunter's mind that Quelch wasn't going. The minutes were passing, and Brake lasted only 15 minutes. If he did not go... Bunter felt quite faint at the awful thought. What would Quelch do if a letter were thrown into a fellow under detention, and he saw it? "Oh, law!" breathed Bunter. From the bottom of his fat heart he wished that he hadn't thought of that astute plan for getting his letter during break, after all. 5 minutes had passed. If that letter had come, and if Bob Cherry kept his word, it might come whizzing in at the window any moment now. Would Quelch go? The minutes seemed like hours to the hapless owl. Then, at length, Quelch moved. Bunter's eyes almost popped through his spectacles at him. Was his luck in? Was the beast really going? He was! Having neatly arranged the papers on his desk, Quelch was always exact, he turned towards the form-room door. He gave Bunter a severe glance, and walked to the door, actually going. Quelch's hand was on the door-handle when... whiz! Plop! Quelch did not open the door he was about to open. He turned round in surprise at that unexpected plop behind him to ascertain the cause. Hello. What? It's come! A little crowd of fellows were looking at the letters in the rack. Bob Cherry's eyes fell upon one addressed to W.G. Bunter. He picked it out from the rest and held it up. Whether that letter contained or not the postal order that Billy Bunter was expecting could not be said, but the letter, at all events, had arrived. "Poor old Bunter," said Harry Wharton, captain of the remove. "If there's a postal order in that letter, it's tough to have to wait for it." "If," said Frank Nugent, laughing. "The ifulness is terrific," remarked Huree Jamset Ram Singh. "Terrific and preposterous," agreed Bob Cherry. "But the old fat man seemed jolly certain about it, and it may have come this time." "Look here, if Bunter's postal order has come, he oughtn't to be allowed to spend it," said Herbert Vernon Smith. "It ought to be framed and hung up in hall." They all laughed at the bounder's idea. "Quelch ought to stretch a point and let him have his postal order if it's come," said Peter Todd. "It's not a thing that often happens." "He's going to have it," said Bob. "I told him I'd chuck the letter in at the form-room window if I found it here, and here it is." "Fathead," said Johnny Bull. "You're not allowed to speak to a fellow in detention, let alone to take him letters." "True, O King," admitted Bob, "but poor old Bunter isn't going to wait till after third school for his postal order." "If you're spotted chucking that letter into the form-room, you'll get into a row, you ass," grunted Johnny Bull. "Well, I said I would," answered Bob, "so it can't be helped." "Well, come on," said Harry Wharton. "We'll stroll past the form-room window, and you can chuck it in when nobody's looking." The famous five walked out into the quad, Bob Cherry with Bunter's letter in his hand. The juniors strolled in a careless, casual sort of way round by the form-room windows. They had a wary eye for Mr. Quelch, who often walked in the quad in morning break. But Quelch was not to be seen in the quad, and they concluded that he was in his study, where he was safe out of the way. But though Quelch was not to be seen, two other beaks dawned on them on the path under the windows. Prout, master of the 5th, and Capper, master of the 4th. Prout and Capper were walking along that path, talking as they walked. "No go," murmured Frank Nugent. "Hang about a bit," said Bob. Prout and Capper progressed as far as the corner of the building, and then turned and walked back. "Oh, bother them," said Bob, "if they're going to trickle up and down that path all through break." Mr. Prout glanced round at the 5 juniors. He gave them a severe glance. There was no law against fellows loitering in the quad in break, if the spirit moved them so to do. Still, the majestic Prout did not approve of a bunch of juniors standing and staring at him. "Better clear," murmured Harry Wharton. "Prout will guess that we're up to something if we stick here." "Bunter's going to have his letter," said Bob obstinately. "I can chuck that letter into the window while they've got their backs turned, see? If they look round, Bob—" "Oh, rot! I'll chance it." Bob Cherry settled the matter by leaving his companions and crossing towards the form-room windows. Prout and Capper had passed under the open remove window again and were progressing once more towards the corner of the building. Bob Cherry strolled on the path behind them. He calculated that Prout and Capper would take at least a minute to reach the corner, where they would turn again. That was ample time if they didn't look round before they turned. He cut across the path to the open window, which was well above the level of his head. Up went his hand with the letter in it, and then... Perhaps the loitering juniors had made Prout suspicious. Anyhow, long before he reached the corner where he was scheduled to revolve, Prout looked round. He looked round at the precise moment that the letter left Bob's upraised hand and whizzed in at the open window of the remove form-room. "Upon my word!" cried Mr. Prout. "Cherry?"
"Oh,"
gasped Bob.
"Did you throw something in at that window?"
Yes, sir."
"What prank is this?" exclaimed Mr. Prout, frowning. "Cherry, I shall report your action to your form master."
Bob Cherry walked back to rejoin his friends with deep feelings.
"Blow Prout and bother Bunter," he said. "That means a jaw from Quelch."
"More likely 6 of the best," said Johnny Bull. "Quelch will be shirty. I told you so."
"Fathead."
Mr. Quelch stared. Billy Bunter groaned. Mr. Quelch was staring at a letter that had fallen suddenly into the remove form-room and lay on the floor between the desks and the window. Really, it was cruel luck. A few more moments and Quelch would have been gone. But Quelch was not gone. He was there, staring at the letter on the floor. The letter had been thrown in at the open window. Obviously, it must have been thrown in for somebody. And as there was only Quelch and Bunter in the form-room, and as it was unimaginable that it could have been thrown in for Quelch, obviously it had been thrown in for Bunter. Some reckless and temerarious person, having found a letter for Bunter in the rack, had tossed it into him with an utter and absolute disregard of all rules and regulations on the subject of detention. No wonder Quelch's brow knitted in a thunderous frown. This was a serious infraction of discipline.
"Oh, crikey!"
groaned Bunter. Quelch stood staring at the letter. Bunter sat blinking at Quelch. For a few moments there was a dead, indeed a deadly, silence. Then Quelch rapped.
"Bunter?"
"Oh, yes, sir."
"No doubt you arranged this, Bunter, expecting to be alone here."
Oh."
Mr. Quelch gave the fat owl an expressive look and walked across to the open window. He passed the letter lying on the floor, apparently more interested in the person who had thrown it in than in the letter itself. He put his head out of the window and discerned Mr. Prout and Mr. Capper peregrinating on the path below. His back was now to Bunter. Bunter blinked at that lean back, and then at the letter on the floor behind Quelch. He half rose.
Quelch plainly wasn't going to let him have that letter, but to lose it now was more than flesh and blood could stand.
Bunter was not eager to read the actual letter, but Billy Bunter wanted to ascertain whether the postal order to the value of £1 was in it. He had to know. Quelch or no Quelch, he just had to know.
"Mr. Prout?"
Quelch was speaking from the window. The fat owl rose and tiptoed towards the letter.
"Is that you, Quelch?"
came Prout's boom from without.
"A letter has been thrown into this form-room, Mr. Prout, to a boy in detention. If you saw anyone—"
"I did, sir," boomed Prout. "I saw Cherry of your form throw something in at that window, Mr. Quelch, only 2 or 3 minutes ago."
The tiptoeing owl reached the letter. He clutched it up. In an instant, a fat and grubby thumb was inserted into the envelope, and it was open.
"Thank you, Mr. Prout."
Quelch turned from the window. No doubt he expected to see Billy Bunter still sitting in his place, for he gave quite a start as he perceived the fat owl standing only 2 or 3 yards from him, the letter in his fat left hand, the fat thumb of his right jammed in the envelope, in the very act of splitting it open.
"Bunter!"
Quelch fairly thundered. Bunter jumped and dropped the letter. He had not had time to see what was in the envelope. There was a folded letter inside, but was there a postal order? Another couple of seconds, and Bunter would have known. Now he was still in ignorance, certainly not an occasion when ignorance was bliss.
"Bunter, how dare you open that letter in detention?"
thundered Mr. Quelch.
I didn't. I mean, I...
"Hand it to me immediately."
Bunter picked up the letter, but he did not hand it to Mr. Quelch immediately. It seemed glued to his fat fingers.
"Give me that letter at once,"
rapped Mr. Quelch, in a voice that made the fat owl jump almost clear of the form room floor. Bunter handed over the letter. There was no help for it. His little round eyes almost bulged through his big round spectacles after it. But it had to go. Quelch's long, lean fingers closed on it, vice-like.
"Now, Bunter," said Mr. Quelch sternly, "you will take 100 lines for having arranged with Cherry to disregard a very strict rule in this outrageous manner. Now return to your place."
But, sir...
"I shall take this letter with me to my study," continued Mr. Quelch. "It will be given you after class today, Bunter."
Oh, law!
Bunter took his place. Quelch walked to the door with the letter in his hand.
"Beast!"
breathed Bunter. He shook a clenched fat fist at his form master's back. He did not expect Quelch to glance round at the form room door, but Quelch did.
"Bless my soul," said Mr. Quelch.
Oh, crikey, I was only scratching my nose, sir.
"You will take 200 lines, Bunter."
Mr. Quelch left the form room with that. Not until the door had closed on him did Bunter venture to shake his fat fist again. Then, having brandished that fat fist ferociously at the door, the dismal owl settled down once more to scribbling Latin. Billy Bunter rolled up to the famous 5 in the quad after third school. Bob, like Bunter, had been awarded 100 lines for the episode of the letter at the form room window.
"I say, you fellows..."
"Oh, blow away, Bunter," said Bob. "You've got me 100 lines over your dashed silly letter."
"Oh, really, Cherry?"
yapped Bunter impatiently. It was irritating to Bunter for a fellow to waste time talking about a trifle that mattered nothing, when Bunter had affairs of the first importance to discuss. "Did the jolly old postal order turn up after all?" asked Frank Nugent with a grin.
"Quelch wouldn't let me have the letter," said Bunter sorrowfully. "Quelch has got that letter, and he says I'm to have it after class. I know the postal order's in it. That's practically a certainty. Well, look here, you fellows. How am I going to get that letter?"
5 fellows stared at Bunter. "You'll have to wait till Quelch coughs it up, fathead," said Harry Wharton.
"Oh, don't be an ass,"
said Bunter peevishly.
"Think I'm going to wait till after class for my own postal order? I say, you fellows, Quelch has gone out, and he won't be in till tiffin. I heard Prout ask him if he was going near the post office, and he said yes. So that means he's gone as far as Friardale."
"What about it, ass?"
"Well, he wouldn't take my letter with him for a walk,"
explained Bunter.
"He's left it in his study, of course."
The fat owl blinked at the famous 5 through his big spectacles.
"I say, which of you fellows will cut into Quelch's study and get my postal order?"
"Echo answers which," grinned Bob Cherry. "You fat chump," said Harry Wharton. "If Quelch has left the letter in his study, you'd better leave it there too. Quelch would skin a fellow for bagging it."
"'Tain't the letter," explained Bunter. "It's the postal order I want. You nip into Quelch's study, Harry, old chap."
"Oh, do I?"
"Yes, old fellow. Safe as houses with Quelch gone out. Besides, if you're copped in his study, you're the head of the form, you know. You can say you came there about the form papers or something."
"Oh, my hat, can I?"
"Of course you can, old chap. You're not very bright, old fellow, or you'd think of these things yourself. Besides, he won't come in," urged Bunter. "He's going to a post office for something, and the nearest is a mile away. Cut in, old chap, will you?"
"Not at all."
"Oh, really, Wharton?"
"Forget all about it, you fat ass."
"I say, Nugent, will you cut in and get my postal order out of that letter?"
"Not in these trousers."
"Beast! I say, Bull."
"Fathead," said Johnny Bull.
"Bob, old fellow."
"Chuck it, you ass," said Bob Cherry. Billy Bunter blinked at the famous 5 in great exasperation.
"I say, you fellows, don't be mouldy funks," he urged. "I keep on telling you it's safe as houses."
"You sure it's safe?" asked Frank Nugent.
"Absolutely, couldn't be safer. Quelch is a mile away. Ain't that absolutely safe?"
"Ah, looks like it," admitted Nugent.
"You'll go, old chap?"
"Oh, no, I won't go. You go."
"Eh?"
"Safe as houses," said Nugent. "Go in and win."
"Beast!"
They all chortled. Safe as it was, absolutely safe according to Bunter, the fat owl did not seem disposed to undertake the venture himself.
"Look here, it's up to you, Bob Cherry,"
exclaimed Bunter. Bob stared at him. "How is it up to me, specially?" he asked.
"Well, it's all your fault that Quelch has got the letter at all. If you hadn't chucked it in at the window—"
"Why, you fat villain, didn't you ask me to chuck it into the window? And haven't I got 100 lines for chucking it in?"
"Well, that's all very well," said Bunter, "but if you'd left it alone, it would have been in the rack when we came out after third school, and I should have it now,"
said Bunter, blinking at him. "Ha, ha, ha, ha!" yelled 4 members of the famous co, quite entertained by the expression on Bob Cherry's face. "Why, you—" gasped Bob. You fat octopus! You blithering bandersnatch!"
"You can call a fellow names," said Bunter, "but you jolly well know that it's up to you to get that postal order out of Quelch's study after landing it there as you did, and I can jolly well say, you."
Bunter was interrupted by a wrathful hand grabbing his collar and slewing him around. Bunter guessed what was coming next, and he roared in anticipation. His anticipation was immediately realized. The largest foot in the Greyfriars Remove landed on the tightest trousers in the county of Kent. Thud!
Yow!
Billy Bunter fled for his fat life. Bob Cherry glared after him, while 4 members of the co howled with laughter. Buzz! Mr. Quelch compressed his lips. He had had quite a pleasant walk after third school. He had walked by the leafy lane down to Friardale. He had called in at the post office there to purchase a postal order for Mr. Prout. He had walked back through the leafy wood, and he had returned to the school in ample time to prepare a Latin paper for the behoof of the Remove that afternoon. It was the buzz of the Hoover that caused that labial demonstration on the part of Quelch. It was an unwelcome sound to his ears. Quelch had to concentrate on a Latin paper, and with that buzz in the offing, he found it difficult to concentrate. As he came up the passage, he hoped that the humming and buzzing was going on in some other master's study, not his own. But that hope proved delusive. His study door was wide open. The Hoover was humming in that very room, and looking in, he beheld the trim figure of Mary, the housemaid, steering round the room what Mr. Quelch, in his private opinion, regarded as something like an infernal machine.
"Upon my word,"
said Mr. Quelch in great vexation. Hum went the Hoover.
"Mary?"
Mary did not hear.
"Mary, my good girl!"
hooted Mr. Quelch. Still Mary did not hear. Quelch's lips by this time were set like iron. He gave up the attempt to speak to Mary, whisked across the room, and put his foot to the electric point where the electric sweeper was plugged in. One jab shut off the switch, and silence suddenly descended on Mr. Quelch's study, and never had silence seemed so golden. "Oh!" cried Mary, suddenly becoming aware of Quelch. Quelch breathed hard.
"Mary, please leave my study for the present. I have some work to do before dinner."
"Oh, but Mrs. Kebble said hoover the study, sir."
"Another time."
"But I should be finished in 10 minutes, sir."
She might as well have said 10 hours or 10 weeks, but Quelch contrived to be patient.
"I'm afraid I cannot spare 10 minutes, Mary. I have much to do. Another time."
Mr. Quelch, being a mere man, did not perhaps realize that housemaids as well as schoolmasters had much to do. What was merely an irritating, deafening noise to Mr. Quelch was, to Mary, a job of work that had to be done, and that she wanted to get done and done with.
"I've done the other studies, sir," said Mary, "and if I could finish this room, I could take the hoover away."
Mr. Quelch drew a deep, deep breath.
"Please go at once, Mary," he said.
"Oh, very well, sir. I shall have to come back later and finish the room, sir."
"Quite so."
"May I leave the hoover here, then, sir?"
"Eh? Oh, yes, yes."
Mary wheeled the hoover into a corner, leaned the handle there, left the study, and closed the door after her. Silent and inactive, the hoover was inoffensive. Quelch dismissed it from his mind. Taking a pocket-book from his pocket, he extracted therefrom a postal order for £1, his recent purchase at Friardale Post Office on Mr. Prout's account. Prout, no doubt, would look in some time and ask for it. In the meantime, Quelch laid it on his table, ready for Prout. Being a very careful gentleman, he picked up the paperweight that lay on Billy Bunter's letter, placed the postal order on the letter, and replaced the paperweight on the postal order, thus making it safe from being blown off the table by draught from door or window. This done, he sat down at the table to prepare the Latin paper for his form. Tap. Mr. Quelch looked up impatiently.
"Come in,"
he rapped. The door opened. It revealed a fat form, a fat face, and a large pair of spectacles. Mr. Quelch frowned. He had for some time forgotten the existence of that troublesome member of his form. He seemed to derive no pleasure whatever from being reminded of it.
"Well?"
he rapped. He shot that monosyllable at Bunter like a bullet.
If you please, sir, stammered Bunter.
"Be brief, Bunter. I'm busy."
My letter, sir."
"I have told you, Bunter, that your letter will be handed to you after class today. Leave my study."
I ain't thinking of the postal order in it, sir. Only—"
"Leave my study, Bunter, at once,"
said Mr. Quelch grimly. Billy Bunter did not leave Mr. Quelch's study at once. His eyes and his spectacles had fallen on the letter under the paperweight. He recognized the letter, although it was partly concealed, and he discerned a postal order for £1 lying across the letter, also pinned down by the paperweight. His eyes popped behind his spectacles. Perhaps there had been a faint lingering doubt at the back of Billy Bunter's mind as to whether there was really and actually a postal order for £1 in that letter. But this was proof positive, for there was the postal order. Seeing was believing. Quelch must have taken it out of the envelope. Bunter hadn't supposed that Quelch would look at a fellow's letter, even if it was already opened. Certainly he would have done so himself, but he had believed better things of Quelch. But he could not doubt it now that he saw the postal order inside the envelope.
"Go!"
rapped Mr. Quelch. It seemed impossible for Bunter to go, leaving that postal order behind. The gimlet eyes glinted at him.
"Unless you leave my study this instant, Bunter, I shall cane you,"
said Mr. Quelch. He reached out for his cane.
"Oh!"
Bunter decided to leave the study that instant.
"I say, you fellows."
"Blow away, Bunter," growled Bob Cherry.
"Oh, really, Cherry?"
"Hook it, fathead," said Harry Wharton. "Nobody's going to raid Quelch's study for your silly letter. Wait till after class."
"Oh, really, Wharton?"
"Speech is silvery," said Huree Jamset Ram Singh, "but silence is the bird in the bush that goes longest to the well. As the English proverb remarks, pack it up fully."
"If you fellows would let a fellow get a word in edgewise," hooted Bunter. "I've thought of a dodge, and I want to know what you fellows think, see?"
The famous five, when they came out of the house after dinner, did not seem to be yearning for the fascinating society of William George Bunter. Moreover, they were discussing a matter of interest to themselves, a football match due with Highfield School. Bunter was quite superfluous.
"I've thought of a dodge, you fellows. It ought to work if Quelch has any feelings," Bunter continued. "I say, suppose my uncle at Folkestone was ill."
"Is he?" asked Bob Cherry.
"Oh, no, but that ain't the point. Suppose he was," said Bunter. "Then I should be very anxious to read his letter and find out whether he was worse or not. See? Oh, my hat! If Quelch has got any feelings, he'd be a bit sympathetic, seeing a chap very anxious about an ill uncle and all that. What?"
argued Bunter. "Better not try pulling Quelch's leg, you fat ass."
"Well, if he hasn't read the letter, he wouldn't know," said Bunter. "If he has, it's no good saying Uncle Carter's ill when he ain't."
The famous five gazed at Bunter. "You piffling, pernicious porker," said Harry Wharton. "Do you imagine that Quelch would nose into a letter like you? Of course he hasn't, you bloated image."
"I happen to know that he jolly well has," retorted Bunter, "because I saw the postal order lying across the letter on his table when I went to his study before dinner."
"Rot," said Bob Cherry.
"I tell you I saw it," hooted Bunter. "A postal order for £1 on the letter under a paperweight."
Not for a moment had it occurred to Bunter that the postal order he had seen on Quelch's table was quite a different postal order, purchased by Quelch at the Friardale post office. That Proud had asked Quelch to get a £1 postal order for him was quite unknown to Bunter. That postal order on Quelch's table was Bunter's postal order. Of that, to Bunter's fat mind, there was no possible doubt whatsoever. "If the postal order's outside, it may have dropped out as the envelope was open," said Harry Wharton.
Oh!
That was a new idea to Bunter.
Do you think that's possible? If he hasn't read the letter,
"You pernicious owl, his name isn't Bunter, and he hasn't."
if a fellow could feel quite sure he hadn't,
sighed Bunter. "Gentlemen, chaps and fellows," said Bob Cherry, "it's no use talking to Bunter. Boot him." "Hear, hear! Good egg," said Johnny Bull. "Let's dribble him round the quad. That'll keep him too busy for telling lies to Quelch. Ready, Bunter?" "Beasts!" roared Bunter. He departed on his highest gear, and Harry, Wharton and Co. were able to resume their own topic of the Highcliffe match, getting a much-needed rest from Billy Bunter and his postal order. Mr. Quelch was standing at the open window of Master's common room, looking out into the quadrangle. In the distance, a number of remove fellows were punting a footer. Quite a benevolent expression came over Quelch's severe face as he watched his boys engaged in that cheery and healthy exercise. And when Coker of the Fifth happened along, and the footer, perhaps by accident, collided with Horace Coker's hat and knocked it off, Mr. Quelch even smiled. Boys will be boys. Quelch had been a boy once, though few fellows in the remove could quite have realized it. But Quelch ceased to smile, and frowned slightly as a fat member of his form came along the path by common room window. William George Bunter was not in his good books or good graces. Bunter did not look quite as usual. His face had a dismal, dolorous, woe-begone expression, and as Quelch's eyes fixed on him, he took a handkerchief much in need of washing from his pocket, pushed up his spectacles, and rubbed his eyes. Bunter had asked the famous five whether they thought Quelch had any feelings. As a matter of fact, he had, and they were moved by the dolorous woe in the fat countenance of William George Bunter. If even that lazy, inattentive, exasperating member of his form had some cause of trouble or grief, Quelch could be sympathetic. He leaned from the window and shouted, "Bunter!" As Quelch called him, the fat owl blinked round. Then he rolled towards the window.
"Yes, sir?"
"Is anything the matter, Bunter?"
asked Mr. Quelch quite kindly.
Oh, yes, sir. My poor uncle, sir."
"Your uncle?" repeated Mr. Quelch. "Is your uncle ill, Bunter?"
"Oh, yes, sir. I hoped he was getting better, but I don't know till I read his letter, sir."
"Oh!"
exclaimed Mr. Quelch. Bunter felt a spasm of terror. If Quelch had read that letter, he would likely know that there was nothing in it about Uncle Carter being ill. Anyhow, he had taken the plunge now. He waited in an anguish of anxiety for his form master to speak.
"Do you mean to tell me, Bunter, that the letter you received this morning was from a sick relative?"
Bunter felt a wave of relief. That question showed that Quelch couldn't have read the letter. Harry, Wharton and Co. had been right.
"Oh, yes, sir. My poor Uncle Carter, sir."
"You absurd boy!" exclaimed Mr. Quelch. "Why did you not tell me so at once in the form room this morning?"
"Oh, I hadn't thought—"
He broke off just in time. It was not judicious to say that he hadn't thought of it then.
"You should have told me at once, Bunter. I should certainly have allowed you to read the letter without delay in such circumstances."
"Oh, would you, sir?"
stuttered Bunter. Mr. Quelch glanced up at the clock tower.
"It will be time for class in a few minutes now, Bunter, but there is ample time for you to read your letter. You may go to my study and take it from the table there."
Oh, thank you, sir."
Bunter went at once. In fact, he shot away like an arrow from a bow. Grief and woe disappeared from his fat face as he shot. He hurtled into Master's passage. He hurled open the door of Quelch's study. He bounded into that apartment. There lay the letter, with the postal order on it, under the paperweight, just as Bunter had seen them before dinner. To remove the paperweight, clutch up the letter and postal order together in a fat paw was the work of a second, a split one. The letter Bunter jammed into his pocket. There was ample time to read that later. It was the postal order upon which the fat owl concentrated. That was crumpled in a grubby paw as he rolled out of the study. He rolled, but he felt as if he were walking on air. At last, at long, long last, Billy Bunter and Billy Bunter's postal order had established contact. Of the fact that it wasn't his postal order at all, Bunter was still in a state of blissful ignorance. Postal order crumpled and clutched in grubby hand, Bunter rolled happily out of Mr. Quelch's study and out of the house. "Hello, hello, hello!" Bob Cherry met him as he rolled out into the quad. "Got that postal order yet, fat man?" Bunter chuckled.
"Look, Cherry," he said.
He held it up. Bob Cherry looked at it. Undoubtedly, indisputably, it was a postal order for £1. "Gratters," grinned Bob.
"I say, old chap, cut across with me, and I'll stand you a jam tart and a ginger beer," chirruped Bunter.
"Come on. Too late, old fat bean. It's just on class. Tuck shop's closing."
"Oh, crikey!"
Bunter bolted across the quad. The school shop was closed during class. If it was closed now, Bunter had to wait, with the postal order burning a hole in his pocket. The Owl of the Remove was not accustomed to putting on speed, but this time he fairly stamped on the gas. He flew. He almost whizzed. But, alas for Bunter, the door of the school shop was closed. Billy Bunter stared at the closed door. It was a stunning blow. A postal order for £1 clutched in a fat paw. Bunter stared and blinked at a shut door, like a fat Perry excluded from the delights of paradise.
"Oh, law!"
groaned Bunter. The bell was ringing. Billy Bunter's plump brow was corrugated with deep thought as he sat in his place in the removed form room. With an aching void and a postal order, Bunter had to sit in class. But had he? Billy Bunter's brain was not, as a rule, a quick worker, but it could accelerate under pressure, and now it was under the combined pressure of a postal order and an aching void. If he could get out of class...
"If you please, sir."
Quelch glanced at Bunter as the fat junior squeaked, perhaps expecting some question which would indicate that Bunter for once was giving attention to the class.
"Well, Bunter?"
I'd like to answer my uncle's letter, sir, and catch the post, if I may, sir,"
said Bunter.
"The collection goes before we're out of class, sir, and my uncle being ill, sir."
Mr. Quelch gave him a sharp look for a moment. He knew his Bunter. But his expression melted into benevolence. Bunter, obviously, was very eager and very anxious. That could be read in his fat face. Quelch would hardly have expected Bunter to be deeply concerned about a sick relative. He was pleased to see it.
"Very well, Bunter. You will be excused this lesson," said Mr. Quelch.
"Oh, thank you, sir,"
gasped Bunter. He almost bounded from his seat. Some of the removed fellows exchanged glances. If Mr. Quelch believed that Bunter was moved by anxiety for a sick uncle, he was the only individual in the removed form room who did. "You fat spoofer," whispered Peter Todd as Bunter passed him. "Fancy Quelch falling for that," murmured Skinner. Bunter did not heed. The Remove were welcome to think what they liked, so long as Quelch was satisfied. And Quelch was. The old oak door closed behind Billy Bunter. Bunter did not grin till the door had closed after him. Then he grinned so wide and expansive a grin that it almost met round his fat head. "Hee-hee-hee-hee!" chuckled Bunter. His eyes glistened behind his spectacles at the thought of a happy and glorious spread at the new bun shop in Courtfield, while the other fellows were mugging up geography in the form room with Quelch. Bunter chuckled again. It would be easy to borrow Quelch's telephone to ring up a taxi while Quelch was in the form room. Easy to drop out over the cloister wall and meet the taxi on its way to the school, thus saving time and eluding observation. In a matter of minutes, he would be at the bun shop, enjoying life. The taxi fare was only 3 shillings. That would leave him 17, out of which he would reserve 2pence for the bus back as far as the corner of Oak Lane, leaving him only a short walk. It was all happily mapped out in Bunter's fat mind. He would be back in ample time for the next lesson. Grinning, the fat owl rolled away to Mr. Quelch's study to borrow the telephone. Nobody was to be seen about Master's studies. Bunter crept cautiously along to Quelch's door. He gave a little start and listened as a sound came from one of the studies, Prout's. Bunter whipped open the door of Quelch's study and popped in. He closed that door quickly behind him. Now he was safe out of sight in case Prout happened to come out. He crossed to the telephone. He was about to lift the receiver and dial the taxi rank at Courtfield when he suddenly paused. There was a heavy tread in the passage. Safety first was Bunter's motto. He backed away from the telephone and ducked down behind Quelch's writing table. By the time the heavy tread reached the door, Bunter was under that ample table, keeping company with the waste-paper basket and a variety of waste paper which had missed the basket. Crumpled under the table, the fat owl waited for that elephantine tread to pass the door when all would be safe. The heavy tread did not pass Quelch's study door. It stopped. The door opened.
"Oh, really?"
said Mr. Prout aloud. He seemed puzzled and a little irritated. Prout had come directly towards the writing table.
"Really?"
repeated Prout.
"Quelch said distinctly on the table beside the blotter, yet it does not appear to be on the table at all."
I say, that's the end of side 1. Side 2.
Bunter, still crouching beneath Quelch's writing table, wondered what Prout was looking for. Certainly it did not occur to him that Prout was looking for a postal order, but that precisely was what Mr. Prout was doing. Quelch had apprised him that the required postal order had been purchased and lay under a paperweight on his study table, ready to be called for, as it were. Mr. Prout looked all over the table. He saw the paperweight, but there was nothing whatever under the paperweight. There were books and various papers on the table, but among them there was nothing that remotely resembled a postal order.
"Really?"
said Mr. Prout once more. The postal order was not on the table. It was not likely to occur to Prout that it was under the table in the possession of a fat, alarmed owl who was crumpled there. Quelch, no doubt, had intended to leave the postal order there under the paperweight on the table, thought Prout, but he must have forgotten to do so. It was surprising in Quelch, and it was annoying to Prout. Having expressed his annoyance with an emphatic snort, Prout rolled doorward again, left the study, and closed the door after him. Bunter, under the table, gasped with relief.
Whatever the beast had wanted there, he was gone.
A fat and breathless owl was able to uncrumple himself and crawl out from under the table. He rolled across to the telephone once more. All was safe now. Billy Bunter proceeded to dial the taxi rank at Courtfield. In less than a minute, a taxi driver had instructions to drive to the school and pick up a passenger who would be walking to meet the taxi on its way to Greyfriars. That done, Bunter quitted Quelch's study and rolled out into the quad. He cut away to the old cloisters, where there was a well-known easy spot for climbing the wall and dropping into the lane outside. Easy, that is to say, for any fellow but Bunter. Bunter negotiated it successfully, but he was gasping for breath when, at last, he dropped into the lane. He rolled down the lane to the high road and blinked along it in the direction of Courtfield. Bunter had covered about 30 yards, at the pace of a very old and very fatigued snail, when the taxi came in sight on the road. Bunter waved a fat hand. The taxi whizzed up and stopped.
"Courtfield Post Office," said Bunter, as he clambered in.
Billy Bunter leaned back in his seat in a state of happy satisfaction. His fat thoughts dwelt on a gorgeous feed, on a pile of enticing, attractive, sticky things, to the exact value of 16 shillings and 10 pence. 3 bob for the taxi-man, who, if he expected a tip, would learn he had another guest coming. 2pence reserved for the motor bus fare back. 16 and 10 for tarts, buns, cakes, ginger pop, eclairs, doughnuts, cream, puffs. It was quite dazzling. Seldom did Bunter possess such a sum to expend on the inner Bunter. It was an added pleasure to enjoy that dazzling spread in lesson time, while less lucky fellows were grinding away in the form room. Everything, in fact, was going Bunter's way, and just at the moment, life seemed to him one grand, sweet song. The taxi buzzed to a halt outside the post office in the High Street. Bunter rolled out.
"Wait here a minute," he said.
"Yes, sir." Bunter mounted the steps into the post office. He rolled across to the counter, slipping a fat hand into his pocket for the postal order. Then, suddenly, he stopped, an extraordinary expression coming over his fat face.
"Oh, cracky!"
Frantically, he groped in that pocket. Nothing in the nature of crumpling paper met his fat fingers. He had put the postal order into that pocket.
It was there. It must be there. It had to be there.
But it wasn't. In utter horror, Bunter groped and groped, but there was no postal order to be found. All he discovered in that pocket was a hole in the lining. The postal order was gone. Mr. Quelch knitted his brow as the door of the remove form room opened and a fat figure rolled in. His eyes fixed grimly on Billy Bunter. Quelch had given Bunter leave from a whole lesson. After such a rare concession from his form master, Bunter should at least have been prompt on time for the next lesson. So far from being prompt on time, Bunter was not on time at all. He was very late.
"Bunter,"
said Mr. Quelch.
Yes, sir,"
mumbled Bunter wearily. Quelch, instead of going on, paused. His gimlet eyes scanned the owl's fat face. Billy Bunter did not look merely dismal. He did not look merely dolorous. Never in all his fat career had William George Bunter looked such an utterly woebegone object. Quelch spoke very mildly.
"You are late, Bunter, but you may go to your place."
"Yes, sir,"
moaned Bunter. He rolled sadly and sorrowfully to his place. Fellows looked at him on all sides. Something was the matter with Bunter, that was clear. "What's up, old fat man?" whispered Bob Cherry.
"I've lost it,"
moaned Bunter. "Eh? What?"
"My postal order."
"Oh," gasped Bob. History proceeded in the remove form room. Billy Bunter could have taken no interest just then in the annals of his native land, had he tried ever so hard. But Quelch, touched by the dismal woe in the fat face, passed him over. Where was that postal order? It had dropped somewhere, but where? It had been awful for Bunter. There was not only the catastrophe itself, overwhelming as that was. On emerging from the post office, he had had to deal with a doubtful and rather sardonic taxi driver, who had made quite a lot of very unpleasant remarks before he finally agreed to wait till the morrow for his fare. Then there had been that walk back to Greyfriars. Where was that postal order? It seemed most likely to Bunter that it had dropped while he was scrambling over the cloister wall. It was a tired Bunter who had arrived back at that spot, but he searched for the postal order there, dragging at the old ivy, blinking into dusty and musty recesses. He searched in vain. Nothing like a postal order met his eyes or his spectacles. The unhappy owl had given it up at last and returned to the form room. Where was that postal order? The question hummed in his fat brain like a refrain. Where was that postal order? So deeply was Bunter engrossed in that problem that he didn't even know the lesson was ended and the remove dismissed, till the stirring of the other fellows apprised him of the fact. He rolled out with the remove.
I say, you fellows,
squeaked Bunter as soon as they were out.
I say, I've lost my postal order. Who's going to help me look for it?
Sure it came? Asked Skinner with a grin.
No, really, Skinner.
Oh, it came all right, said Bob Cherry. Bunter showed it to me before class. Tough luck to lose it, old fat man. Silly ass, commented Johnny Bull.
Oh, really, Bull? I didn't know there was a hole in the pocket. I mean, I'd forgotten it. I say you fellows be pals and help a fellow look for it.
Oh, all right. All hands on deck, said the captain of the remove. Where do you think you may have dropped it, you fathead?
Well, anywhere, really,
said Bunter.
It might have been in the quad, or in the passages, or in the cloisters, or on the road, or...
Oh, my hat, said Bob Cherry. Well, we'll give the jolly old show the once-over. The famous five were all willing to help. They looked almost everywhere for that postal order. They looked up and down passages, they scanned the quad, they glanced behind trees and round buttresses, they hunted in the cloisters. Really and truly, they took a lot of trouble. But that elusive postal order was not discovered.
Buzz! Upon my word,
breathed Mr. Quelch. It was scarcely possible to avoid feeling irritated. After class, an hour of agreeable leisure stretched before him, before he joined the other beaks at tea in common room, and Mr. Quelch was going to put in that happy hour at his History of Greyfriars, the great work which had been the occupation of his leisure for 20 years or so. There was a smile of happy anticipation on Quelch's crusty face as he wended his way to his study. And then, buzz! The hum of the hoover. Had he remembered it, he might have supposed that Mary would return to finish hoovering his study while he was in the form room, when the hoover might have hummed like a hive of bees without bothering him. He looked in at the open doorway of his study. There was Mary, there was the hoover. It was plugged in, buzzing merrily, and Mary was steering it to and fro with trailing flecks. At the moment it was engulfing fragments of waste paper under Quelch's writing table that had missed the waste paper basket.
Buzz! Mary! Mary! Please cease that dreadful noise at once!
Rapped Mr. Quelch. Mary looked round. There was blessed silence as she shut off the current. "Did you speak, sir?" asked Mary.
"I did. Please take that implement out of my study, Mary. I have work to do."
"Only another 5 minutes, sir," said Mary, encouragingly. "Your carpet's very dusty, sir."
"And my time is of value, Mary," said Mr. Quelch tartly.
Oh, yes, sir,"
agreed Mary. "Just another few minutes, sir." She turned on the current again without waiting for a reply. Perhaps she thought that Mr. Quelch assented. Buzz! He tried to be patient. He stood in the study and waited, while Mary steered the implement to and fro, dust vanishing into its maw like magic. There was a tread in the passage. A portly figure loomed in the study doorway.
"Ah, you are here, Quelch,"
said Mr. Prout. Quelch glanced at him. He did not hear the words in the buzz of the hoover.
"My dear Quelch, I came here for that postal order this afternoon, but did not find it on your table,"
said Mr. Prout.
"Eh?"
Prout raised his voice in competition with the hoover.
"The postal order you kindly brought in for me this morning, Quelch."
"Indeed, I certainly left it there."
"Eh?"
"It was there, under the paperweight,"
roared Quelch.
"I could not find it there,"
bawled Prout.
"Indeed, that is very singular."
"Eh?"
"Upon my word, this noise is intolerable," exclaimed Mr. Quelch. "It must cease. Mary!"
Buzz!
"Mary!"
raved Mr. Quelch. Mary shut off as she realized that Mr. Quelch was addressing her.
"Did you speak, sir?"
she asked.
Take that dreadful thing away."
"Another minute or two, sir."
"Not another second. I cannot hear myself speak. Take it away immediately."
"Oh, very well, sir,"
said Mary, with a slight toss of the head. Mary unplugged the hoover and wheeled it out of the study. Quelch, at last, was able to hear his own voice and Prout's.
"You were saying, Prout," said Mr. Quelch.
"I came in for the postal order, but it was not on the table under the paperweight,"
explained Mr. Prout.
"No doubt you forgot to place it there, Quelch."
"I certainly did place it there. I am not in the habit of forgetting,"
said Mr. Quelch tartly.
"Oh, it is a matter of no moment,"
said Mr. Prout soothingly.
"But if the postal order is still in your pocket—"
"It could scarcely be still in my pocket, Mr. Prout, when I placed it under the paperweight on my table," said Mr. Quelch.
"It was not there when I looked for it, Mr. Quelch."
"That is very extraordinary, Mr. Prout."
"Well, if you are quite sure,"
murmured Prout. Quelch made no rejoinder to that. Nothing in the history of mankind was more certain than that Quelch had placed that postal order under the paperweight on his table. Quelch turned to the table and scanned it. There was the paperweight, but there was nothing under it, excepting, of course, the table. "Extraordinary," said Mr. Quelch. He wrinkled his brows as he gazed at the paperweight.
"That stupid boy Bunter," he said.
"Bunter?"
repeated Mr. Prout.
"As it happens," explained Mr. Quelch, "there was something else under the paperweight, a letter for Bunter of my form. The postal order was placed on the letter, both under the paperweight. Just before dinner, I gave Bunter leave to fetch his letter from this study, and he must have done so, as it is gone. To take it, he must have lifted the paperweight. He should, of course, have replaced it on the postal order after taking his letter. Apparently he did not do so.
But the postal order in that case should still be there, Quelch, whether under the paperweight or not.
Certainly it should, assented Mr. Quelch.
I do not see it,
said Mr. Prout. Quelch scanned the table. He was silent for a moment or two, puzzled and annoyed. Prout waited. Having handed Quelch £1 for the purchase of that postal order, Prout naturally wanted it.
I will send for Bunter, said Mr. Quelch at last. No doubt the foolish boy can tell me where it is, as he must have moved it. I will bring the postal order to your study, Mr. Prout.
Thank you, Mr. Quelch.
Quelch touched the bell for Trotter and dispatched him to call Bunter. "We've looked jolly nearly everywhere," said Harry Wharton.
Oh, really, Wharton?
"Look here," said Johnny Bull. "We can't find it, but you can get a lost postal order replaced if you can give the number."
Oh,
said Bunter. It was a gleam of hope. True, it was no present help in time of need. Bunter wanted the postal order at once to translate into terms of tuck. If the postal authorities, on being satisfied that the postal order was lost, shelled out the £1, there was at least a prospect of tuck to come. "Did you notice the number?" asked Harry.
Oh, no.
"Most likely your uncle took the number before posting it," said Johnny Bull. "Did he mention it in his letter?"
I don't know. I haven't read it yet,"
explained Bunter. "Oh, my hat," said Bob Cherry. Bunter evidently was interested only in the remittance, and not in any avuncular remarks that might have accompanied it. Harry Wharton laughed. "Well, you better read it now, and see if Mr. Carter said anything about the number," he said. "Unless you've lost the letter as well as the postal order," grunted Johnny.
"It was in a different pocket,"
said Bunter. He groped.
"Ah, here it is."
From a pocket which did not happen to have a hole in it, Bunter drew Mr. Carter's letter. He took out the folded missive from the envelope and unfolded it. He blinked at it through his big spectacles. Then an extraordinary change came over Bunter's fat face. It was quite startling. Harry Wharton and co., watching him, could only wonder what there was in that letter to cause Billy Bunter's jaw to drop and his little round eyes to pop behind his big round spectacles.
"Oh, crikey!"
"What on earth's up?" asked Nugent.
"Oh, crumbs!"
"Does your uncle mention the number?" asked Johnny Bull.
Oh, no. Oh, Jiminy."
"Bad news?" asked Harry.
"Oh, law.
"Look here, you ass."
I say, you fellows. Oh, crikey. I say, oh, my uncle never sent me a postal order at all."
"What?"
"Look at the letter,"
gasped Bunter. Blankly, the famous five looked at the letter from Uncle Carter. It was really rather unfortunate that Bunter had not looked at it a little earlier. It ran, "Dear William, I have received your letter, in which you mention that you have not yet received the £1 I promised you. I have not forgotten it, and I shall post it to you in the form of a postal order next week. Your affectionate uncle, Humphrey Carter." The famous five gazed at that letter. Then they gazed at Bunter. Bunter blinked at them anxiously.
I say, you fellows, doesn't that sound as if my uncle never put a postal order in the letter at all?"
"It does, you unbelievable ass," said Harry Wharton.
"Oh, crikey!"
"But the blithering idiot had a postal order," said Bob. "He showed it to me. It was a postal order for £1, all right." "Holy smoke," said Harry Wharton. "Quelch must have had a postal order for something or other on his table, and that fat chump, and he's lost it," said Nugent.
"Oh, law! I say, you fellows, I thought it was my postal order,"
moaned Bunter. "You blithering owl," said Bob Cherry. "That unlimited idiot has bagged a postal order that belongs to Quelch and lost it." "Quelch will miss it," said Nugent. "Bunter, you priceless chump! Bunter, you potty porpoise!"
I say, you fellows, that beastly postal order's got to be found,"
gasped Bunter.
"If we find it, I can take it back to Quelch's study before he misses it. What the thump did Quelch have a postal order on his table for? Of course I thought he'd taken it out of the letter. What was a fellow to think?"
"Oh, you chump!"
It's all right if we find it."
"It can't be found, fathead," said Bob.
But I say, Quelch might think it was pinched,"
gasped Bunter. "You better go to Quelch at once and tell him," said Harry Wharton. A yell from Bunter.
He mightn't believe that I thought it was my postal order at all.
Well, it wants some believing, said Johnny Bull with a very sharp look at Bunter.
Beast, think I'd pinch a postal order?
You better go to Quelch at once and tell him the whole thing, said Harry.
Look here, I never had anything to do with it. Don't you fellows get saying that I had a postal order or anything? If it can't be found, keep it dark, see?
For goodness sake, have a little sense, Bunter, exclaimed the captain of the Remove. If you begin telling Quelch lies about it, he'll think you pilfered the rotten thing.
I hope I'm not the fellow for lying,
said Bunter. Hello, here comes Trotter, exclaimed Bob Cherry. Trotter, the house page, came into the cloisters. Evidently he was looking for somebody, and the famous five could guess for whom. Quelch must have gone to his study after class, and they could guess that he had missed the postal order. Trotter looked round and came across to the group of juniors.
Master Bunter,
he said,
Mr. Quelch wants you in his study.
Oh, law!
Billy Bunter rolled dismally away, but whether with the intention of telling Quelch the truth was very doubtful. Such a sudden change in Bunter's manners and customs was considerably improbable. Mr. Quelch's face was grim as he eyed the fat figure at his doorway.
"Come in, Bunter,"
he rapped. Bunter rolled reluctantly in. Mr. Quelch was, in point of fact, deeply disturbed. A postal order for £1 was missing from his study. Bunter, it was certain, must have moved that postal order in getting his letter. He was careless enough to leave it lying anywhere on the table without replacing it under the paperweight. But Quelch had gone through all the papers on the table and made assurance doubly sure that the postal order was not among them. He was very anxious to see Bunter and clear up this extremely disturbing and disagreeable matter. Here was Bunter at last, dragging himself reluctantly into the study, as if his fat little legs almost refused to carry him in.
"Listen to me, Bunter,"
said Mr. Quelch quietly.
"Just before class this afternoon, I gave you leave to take your letter from this study."
Yes, sir.
"You took the letter?"
Yes, sir.
On that letter, under the same paperweight, was a postal order for £1. You must have noticed it, Bunter, when you took your letter. That postal order is missing. What can you tell me about it?"
Mr. Quelch's eyes were fixed on Billy Bunter's fat face. Bunter quaked inwardly. He wasn't going to have Quelch making out that he had snooped that postal order. That was fixed in Bunter's fat and fatuous mind. Now that he knew that that postal order wasn't his, he knew what the situation must look like. If he could have produced the postal order, it would have been different. But he couldn't, as he had lost it.
"Well?"
rapped Mr. Quelch.
Did you say a postal order, sir?"
"I did," said Mr. Quelch. "I must know what has become of that postal order, Bunter. What did you do with it?"
I didn't, sir."
"Be careful what you say, Bunter. This is a very serious matter. The postal order is missing. It has been taken from my study."
Has it, sir?"
"It has, Bunter. I purchased that postal order this morning for Mr. Prout at the Friardale post office. I placed it under that paperweight with your letter. When Mr. Prout came here for it this afternoon, it was gone. It cannot be found, Bunter."
Can't it, sir?"
"It cannot, Bunter. Now, just before class, you came here and took your letter from under the same paperweight."
No, sir. I mean, and I did take my letter, sir."
"Be careful how you answer me, Bunter. I warn you, if only for your own sake, to tell me the truth."
It wasn't there, sir. I should have noticed it if it had been."
"Upon my word."
Perhaps it blew out of the window, sir,"
suggested Bunter hopefully.
"Do not be absurd, Bunter."
"It wasn't there at all, sir. And I left it there, quite safe, under the paperweight when I went away, sir."
"What?"
gasped Mr. Quelch.
Can I go now, sir?"
"Bunter,"
exclaimed Mr. Quelch.
"I am reluctant to believe any boy in my form capable of pilfering."
"Oh, crikey."
"Tell me at once what you did with that postal order."
No, nothing, sir. I never touched it at all. And I wouldn't have, only I thought it was mine."
You thought it was yours? What do you mean, you utterly stupid boy, if your words had any meaning at all?"
I was expecting a postal order, sir, and my letter being open, I thought you'd taken it out.
Bless my soul, said Mr. Quelch.
I wouldn't have touched it, sir. Only I thought it was mine.
Then you did take it, Bunter.
No.
Grant me patience, Bunter. Bunter, it is scarcely possible for me to believe that you can have been so obtuse, so stupid, so utterly stupid, as to have acted in the way your words would imply. But if you took the postal order under such an extraordinary error, return it to me at once.
I can't, sir.
And why? Thundered Mr. Quelch. Why? Have you changed that postal order, Bunter, and expended the proceeds?
Oh, crumbs. No, sir, howled Bunter in alarm.
Then why can you not return it?
It wasn't there when I came to the study for my letter, and besides, I never came.
Mr. Quelch gazed at that member of his form. He did not speak. It really seemed that William George Bunter had taken his breath away.
May I go now, sir? Ventured Bunter.
Bunter, I command you to return the postal order you took from my table. If you do not return it, it is obvious that you have cashed it, in which case you will be taken to your headmaster.
Ow!
And charged with pilfering.
Oh, crikey!
And expelled from Greyfriars. Ooh, produce it!
Thundered Mr. Quelch.
I've lost it!
Wailed Bunter.
I say, you fellows, blow away, Bunter. But I say...
Give us a rest. Harry, Wharton and co. were at tea in number 1 study. Over tea, they were talking soccer. Soccer was a more interesting subject than Bunter. Bunter, however, did not blow away. Instead of blowing away down the passage, he blew into the study.
I say, you fellows, you might be a bit sympathetic, he said reproachfully. I've been to Quelch. I say, he makes out that I had that postal order.
Well, you did have it, you fat villain, said Harry Wharton.
It turns out that it was Prout's, said Bunter. The old ass asked the other old ass to bring it in for him this morning, and that's how it came to be on Quelch's table. Of course, I thought...
You thought? Asked Johnny Bull sarcastically.
I thought it was mine, or I shouldn't have taken it along with the letter, groaned Bunter. It would have been all right if I hadn't lost it. Quelch only wants me to hand it back. I think he would believe that I took it by mistake if I handed it back.
The famous 5 gazed at Bunter.
As the matter stands, continued the fat owl, Quelch thinks that I bagged that postal order from his study.
You mean he knows you did? Hooted Nugent.
And he doesn't believe I lost it, went on Bunter. I say, if I don't take it back, I'm going up to the head.
You haven't cashed it? Asked Johnny Bull.
Beast!
You know, Bunter's idiot enough to do exactly what he says he did, said Bob Cherry. But losing the postal order on top of it, that sounds jolly thick. Quelch can't be expected to swallow that. Snort from Johnny Bull.
But it's true,
wailed Bunter. Johnny shrugged his shoulders. The other members of the co looked at Bunter dubiously. They hardly knew what to believe. Bunter's reputation as an Ananias had come home to roost, as it were. No doubt he told the truth, sometimes, but if trouble threatened, Bunter was rather like Mr. Jagger's celebrated witness, who was prepared to swear, in a general way, anything. "Look here, you fat spoofer," said Harry Wharton at last. "We know you pulled Quelch's leg to get out of class and hiked off to Courtfield to cash that postal order and gorge at the bun shop. If you did it—"
"I didn't," howled Bunter. "I tell you it was gone when I felt in my pocket for it."
"Blessed if I know what to think," said Frank Nugent. "But if you've really lost that postal order, Bunter, you'd better find it again before you go up to Dr. Locke."
"I tell you it's lost!"
shrieked Bunter. Herbert Vernon Smith looked into the study from the passage. "Bunter here?" he asked. "Oh, here you are, Bunter. You're wanted."
"Oh, crikey!
"Wingate's looking for you," said Smithy.
I say, what does Wingate want me for?" asked Bunter. "I think he wants to ask me to tea in his study, Smithy."
The bounder chuckled. "Not quite," he answered. "He wants you for Quelch, fathead." Smithy walked on up the passage. Billy Bunter turned his spectacles on the famous 5 with a dolorous blink.
I say, you fellows, That means Quelch wants me to take to the head. I ain't going to the head.
Billy Bunter blinked into the passage. A glimpse of a stalwart figure on the landing was enough for him. He bolted back into the study like a scared rabbit.
I say, you fellows, don't you tell Wingate I'm here.
The fat owl backed out of sight behind the open door. There he was in full view of 5 fellows in the study, but invisible to anyone looking in from the passage, unless that one looked round the door. Wingate's tread was heard in the passage. Harry, Wharton and Co. stared at Bunter behind the door, and then at one another. Then they hurriedly resumed tea, as the stalwart form of the captain of Greyfriars appeared in the doorway.
"Is that young ass Bunter up here?"
asked Wingate. Bunter behind the door hardly breathed. "Bunter?" repeated Bob Cherry. "Bunter's study is number 7, Wingate." Wingate nodded and went on up the passage. Bob's answer was perfectly veracious, though perhaps it savoured a little more of the wisdom of the serpent than of the innocence of the dove. Bunter's study certainly was number 7, and the Greyfriars captain went on to number 7 to look for him. Wingate of the 6th looked into number 7's study in the remove. Peter Todd and Tom Dutton, who were at tea there, jumped up with due respect at the sight of the captain of the school. Wingate glanced around the study.
"This is Bunter's study, isn't it?" he asked. "Know where he is, Todd?"
"I think he went to Quelch," answered Peter.
"Ha! I know he did. Quelch wants him again," grunted Wingate. "Know where Bunter is, Dutton?"
"Eh?" Wingate had forgotten for the moment that Tom Dutton was deaf. He raised his voice as he repeated the question.
"Know where Bunter is?"
he asked, in a voice that could be heard as far as number 1 study, and that reached the fat ears of a terrified owl behind a door. But it did not seem quite loud enough for Dutton. Dutton looked astonished.
"Have you seen Bunter?"
Wingate repeated.
"Well, I don't know that I've seen a hunter. I've seen a huntsman," answered Dutton.
"Not hunter, Bunter!" roared Wingate. "I said Bunter, not hunter."
"I know Bunter's not a hunter. What about it?" replied Dutton.
"Do you know where Bunter is?" howled Wingate. "I've got to take him to Quelch."
"Bunter isn't Welsh that I know of," yelled Peter Todd.
"Have you seen Bunter?" bawled Wingate.
"Yes, I saw him in the quad after class. I think he was looking for something. You needn't yell at a fellow. I'm not deaf."
Wingate gave it up at that. It seemed rather less exertion to look for Bunter than to inquire after him in his study. He decided to check the studies one after another for Bunter, beginning with number 2, as it already looked into number 1. But as he stopped at the door of number 2, he gave a little jump at the sound of a fat squeak from number 1.
"I say, you fellows, look out and see if that beast's still in the passage."
"Oh!" cried Wingate. He strode into the doorway of number 1 study. 5 fellows looked as innocent as they could under a grim glare.
"You young sweeps!" exclaimed Wingate. "Bunter was here all the time. I've just heard him speak."
"Oh, crikey!"
That startled exclamation from behind the door apprised the Greyfriars captain of Bunter's whereabouts. He circumnavigated the door and stared at the fat owl.
"You young rascal, you're
here," he snapped. A muscular hand on a collar hooked Bunter out from behind the door like a fat winkle from a shell.
"Ow! Ow, leggo!"
roared Bunter as he was twirled into the doorway. "Poor old Bunter," murmured Bob Cherry, as the squeaking fat owl was hooked out of the study. "He's for it now."
"Still time for him to cough up Prout's postal order," said Johnny Bull.
"Yes, but if he's lost it,
then he'd better look in his pocket and find it," said Johnny sarcastically. Buzz!
The sound of the hoover greeted Bunter's fat ears as Wingate marched him into Master's Passage. Mary was busy again, hoovering the long strip of carpet that ran the length of Master's Passage to the door of Common Room. Wingate walked Bunter as far as Quelch's door and pushed the fat owl in.
"Here is Bunter, sir,"
he said.
Thank you, Wingate."
The Greyfriars captain walked away down the passage, glad to be done with Bunter. The hapless owl stood just within the doorway, eyeing Mr. Quelch through his big spectacles, as a fat rabbit might have eyed a particularly ferocious fox.
"Bunter, have you brought the postal order to me?"
No.
"Very well.
Mr. Quelch compressed his lips hard.
"I shall now take you to Dr. Locke, Bunter, and your headmaster will deal with you. I shall—" "Stop! Stop! Bunter, how dare you! Stop!"
shrieked Mr. Quelch. Bunter did not stop. He bolted. Quelch rushed after him. Bunter flew. Down the passage, Wingate was yet in sight, going. Behind was Quelch and a clutching hand. Up the passage was Mary, steering the buzzing Hoover along the carpet strip, with the flex trailing. Bunter bolted up the passage. Quelch's clutching hand, sweeping out of the doorway, missed him by a foot.
"Stop!"
thundered Quelch. Wingate looked round and came hurrying back. "Stop, Bunter, you young ass!" he shouted. Bunter heeded neither of them. He flew. Mary, notwithstanding the buzz of the motor in the vacuum cleaner, heard those shouts and looked round, the Hoover still buzzing. "Lor' mercy!" cried Mary in astonishment, as she beheld a fat junior charging up the passage like a runaway bull, with a form master and a sixth form prefect in pursuit. Bunter swerved to avoid Mary and the Hoover, but he did not see the trailing flex. He was not aware of it till his feet caught in it, and he went headlong. "Ow!" roared Bunter as he crashed. It was a terrific crash. Billy Bunter, yelling frantically, rolled over on the floor, wildly mixed up with the Hoover. The Hoover suddenly ceased to buzz. Mary did not need to switch it off. The motor went off song as Billy Bunter's uncommon weight crashed on the machine. No doubt it was damaged. Few machines could have escaped damage under the tremendous impact of Billy Bunter's avoirdupois. But if the Hoover was silent, Bunter was not. Yell on yell and roar on roar resounded from Bunter.
"Bunter!
Yahoo!
Be silent!
Yow!
Cease that ridiculous noise instantly, Bunter!
Study doors were opening in the passage. Mr. Hacker looked out of one, Mr. Prout out of another, Mr. Capper out of a third. Mr. Quelch, almost crimson with anger and vexation, stooped, grasped the fat owl by a podgy shoulder, and heaved him to his feet.
"Upon my word, what is this disturbance?"
boomed Mr. Prout from his doorway.
What has happened?"
piped Mr. Capper.
"One of Quelch's boys,"
said Mr. Hacker sardonically, and he went back into his study and closed the door with a bang.
"Bunter, be silent! Will you be silent, Bunter?"
Ow! Ow! I'm hurt. I believe my leg's broken, sir. I believe I've broken the spinal column in my elbow. Ow!
Mr. Quelch breathed very hard and very deep. With a grip of iron on Bunter's fat shoulder, he jerked him away.
"Come with me, Bunter, and be silent," he breathed. "Another sound, and I will take you back to my study and cane you with the greatest severity."
Bunter spluttered, but he ceased to roar.
"Mary?"
Quelch, with an effort, forced himself to speak courteously.
"I am sorry that this stupid boy of my form has interrupted you. I am taking him away. You may resume your work with that implement."
Mary tossed her head. "I think the motor's busted. Anyhow, it won't switch on. I shan't be able to finish the carpet."
"Bunter, you stupid boy, you have damaged the vacuum cleaner," said Mr. Quelch severely.
"I shall have to tell Mrs. Kebble, and she'll have to get the young man from Courtfield," said Mary, "and it may be days."
"Oh, dear me, said Mr. Quelch. "Come, Bunter."
He walked Bunter away with a hand on his shoulder. The fat owl was not to be given another chance to bolt. Mary, with a perceptible sniff, wheeled the disabled Hoover away. Bunter, with fingers of steel compressing his fat shoulder, was led towards the headmaster's study. They arrived at the door of Dr. Locke's study. There, however, Quelch paused. He still gripped Bunter's fat shoulder, but he did not for the moment raise his other hand to tap at the door. He fixed his gimlet eyes on the fat, scared face.
"Bunter," he said quietly.
Yes, sir?
"I shall give you a last opportunity, Bunter, before taking you in to Dr. Locke. Knowing your almost incredible stupidity—"
"Oh, really, sir?"
"I can believe that you really did take that postal order from my study by mistake, as you have stated, if you return it at once, Bunter. If you do not return it, Bunter, you will be expelled from the school for pilfering. I will give you one more opportunity to make restitution."
answer.
For the last time, Bunter, it will be too late in the presence of your headmaster. Is it in your pocket, Bunter?
No.
Is it in your study?
No.
Where is it then, Bunter?
I don't know, sir.
Quelch set his lips.
You leave me no recourse but to place the facts before Dr. Locke. Come.
Quelch raised his hand to tap at the door. Then Bunter had a brainwave, the sort of brainwave that Bunter would have.
Oh, sir, please,
he gasped. Quelch paused with upraised hand.
Well?
Can I go and fetch it from my study, sir?
Upon my word, said Mr. Quelch. Bunter, you utterly unscrupulous boy, I hardly know how to deal with you. Go and fetch it from your study at once.
Oh, yes, sir,
gasped Bunter. I say, Henry looks shirty, whispered Bob Cherry. Henry Samuel Quelch had a look of concentrated anger, quiet and calm, but all the more deadly in its quietness and calmness. Something evidently had stirred Quelch's deepest ire. There had been a cheery buzz of voices in the rag. Now there was a hush as Quelch entered. The crowd of juniors waited, as it were, for the thunderbolt to crash.
Is Bunter here?
There was almost a gasp of relief. It was only Bunter. It was the owl of the Remove who was the cause of the deep, deep wrath discernible in Quelch's speaking countenance. Harry Wharton, as head boy of the Remove, answered, "No, sir."
Do you know where he is, Wharton?
No, sir.
Where did you see him last?
In my study, sir, some time ago, when Wingate came to fetch him.
Has any boy here seen him since?
Quelch's eyes scanned the staring crowd of juniors.
Has any boy here seen Bunter during the last half hour?
There was no reply to that. Apparently none of the fellows in the rag had seen Billy Bunter during the last half hour.
Todd?
Quelch broke the silence with a rap. "Oh, yes, sir," answered Peter.
Bunter shares your study. Do you know anything of his movements?
Not since Wingate came up for him, sir.
He told you nothing of his intentions?
No, sir.
Dutton?
Rapped Quelch. Tom Dutton, like the other fellows, was staring at Quelch. He continued to stare at him without answering, not having heard the rap. Peter Todd gave him a nudge. Dutton transferred his stare from Quelch to Peter. "What?" he began. Peter made a sign towards Mr. Quelch, and the deaf junior transferred his stare back again to the Remove master. Did you speak to me, sir?" he asked.
I did, Dutton. Have you seen Bunter since Wingate came up to the study?
I didn't notice whether Wingate was muddy or not, sir. I don't think he was.
I did not say muddy, Dutton,
gasped Mr. Quelch. I thought you said Wingate, sir. I don't know anything about muddy mutton, said Tom, looking quite bewildered. There was a gurgle in the rag. It was immediately suppressed as a gimlet eye glinted round. It was no time for gurgling.
Yes, all right, that will do, Dutton, said Mr. Quelch hastily. Wharton, Bunter cannot be found. There can be no doubt that he is deliberately keeping out of sight in order to avoid being taken to his headmaster. And the others may help you.
Oh, certainly, sir, answered Harry. May I ask, sir, if it is about the postal order that was lost?
It is about the postal order taken from my study by Bunter, Wharton.
Bunter has told us about it, sir. He took the postal order by a silly mistake and lost it.
He did not lose it, Wharton. He has admitted to me that the postal order is still in his possession.
Oh, gasped Harry, quite taken aback. The captain of the Remove had felt impelled to put in a word for the hapless fat owl if he could. Quelch's answer took all the wind out of his sails. He has admitted it, sir?
He has, Wharton. He left me at the headmaster's door to fetch it from his study.
Oh, gasped Harry again.
But he did not return,
said Mr. Quelch in a grinding voice.
He is deliberately keeping out of sight to elude the consequences of his unscrupulous action. I shall be obliged, Wharton, if you will find him, with the help of the other boys of my form.
Horace Coker of the 5th form gave an irritated grunt. For goodness sake, he said, give a fellow a bit of room. Ain't this table big enough for 3 fellows? Potter and Green looked up from prep. The table in Coker's study was a large one with ample room for 3 fellows to sit round it at prep and pack their legs underneath, even though Horace Coker's legs were an outsize in legs, and his feet designed on the same generous scale. "What's the trouble?" inquired Potter.
"Can't you give a fellow room for his legs?" demanded Coker.
"I'm not in your way, Coker."
"Well, you, Green."
"Not guilty," said Green. Coker frowned.
"Don't be a funny ass," he snapped. "Rotten enough to have to chew on this Latin tripe without a fellow bumping against a fellow's legs all the time. Keep over your own side."
"I am keeping over my own side."
"Oh, don't argue," said Coker.
"So am I," said Potter.
"Don't jaw, Potter."
"Well, look here."
"Oh, dry up, the 2 of you," said Coker crossly. "We've got to mug up this tripe for Prout. Think I can mug it up with 2 silly asses jawing all the time? Give us a rest."
Potter and Green gave the great Horace rather expressive looks, and resumed prep. Neither of them was conscious of having bumped Coker's extensive legs under the table, but Coker, it seemed, fancied that his legs had been bumped, and was not open to argument on the subject. Prep went on. Coker's rugged brow corrugated over it. Latin did not come easily to Horace Coker. However, he decided to push on with it. He stretched his long legs under the table for greater ease, and gave an irritated yelp.
"Can't you keep your hoofs over your own side, Potter?"
"If you mean my feet, I've got them tucked under my chair," answered Potter.
"Well, yours, Green."
"Do you want the whole study to park your feet in, Coker?" inquired Green.
"I want a bit of room, Green, and if you bump me again under the table, I'll jolly well give you a hack."
"I never moved," protested Green.
"Well, look here, Potter."
"I never moved either." "Oh, didn't you?" said Coker with withering sarcasm.
"You never moved, and Green never moved, but my knees got bumped just the same. Well, I'll tell you what, next time I get a jolt, I'm going to land out. If you're not tired of this silly game, I am, and I can jolly well tell you so." "My hat! Take that!"
roared Coker, as he felt something bump against his stretching legs under the table, and drawing one of them back, he delivered a hack.
Yaroo! Crikey, that's the end of side 2. Oh, I say, this is side 3.
It was a fearful yell as Coker's hack landed. But the yell did not proceed from Potter or Green. That hack had not landed on either of them, but it had landed on somebody, as that fearful yell testified. Coker jumped.
"Why, what?"
he stuttered. "Great Pip! Holy smoke!
Yow! Ooh! Yaroop!
Came a roar.
"There's somebody under the table!"
gasped Coker. He bounded to his feet, pushing back his chair. He grasped the table and dragged it aside. 3 pairs of eyes fixed in amazement and wrath upon a figure that was revealed. A fat figure, with a fat face adorned by a big pair of spectacles, with a fat hand clutching a fat shin where Coker's hack had landed, and still yelling.
Yow!
"Bunter!"
said Coker. "Bunter!" repeated Potter and Green.
Wow! Beast!
roared Bunter.
Ow! Oh, my shin!
They gazed at him. News that a removed junior was missing from the list had not reached the 5th. That Bunter was in flight and in hiding was quite unknown to Coker and Co., and they could not begin to guess why he was squatted under the table in their study.
"Bunter!"
repeated Coker.
"That fat remove tick hiding under our table."
"What is the fat freak doing here?" exclaimed Potter. "The remover at prep now."
"What are you up to in our study?"
roared Coker.
"What do you mean by sneaking under the table and bumping a fellow's legs? If that's your idea of a lark..."
Oh, no, I say...
"Have you been after my tuck?"
That was a natural suspicion to arise in Coker's mind.
No,
gasped Bunter.
No, I never even looked into the cupboard. I never saw the pie there, Coker. No, and I never ate any.
"By gum," said Coker. "Open that door, Greenie. I'll kick him right out into the passage. I'll give him snooping my tuck."
Billy Bunter bounded to his feet. As Green threw open the door, Bunter rushed for it. Thud! Bunter's rush was rapid, but it was not rapid enough to escape Horace Coker's lunging foot. That heavy foot thudded on his tight trousers, and Bunter, thus accelerated, fairly flew through the doorway. There was a bump in the passage and a roar. 5 or 6 study doors opened, and fifth form men looked out, startled by the sudden uproar. Yow, ow, 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 whoa! Coker emerged from the doorway after Bunter. Bunter bounded up again. He flew down the passage towards the landing. After him rushed Coker. Bunter charged down the fifth form passage, yelling, "Thud, thud, thud!" Bunter flew, but Coker's long legs easily kept pace. He dribbled Bunter as far as the landing, every jolt behind eliciting a fresh, frantic roar from the hapless fat owl. "Oh, no! Oh, no, no, no! Beast! Oh, no! Stop it! Ow!" Bunter flew across the landing. He was heading for the stairs as the nearest way of escape. But as he reached the top of the staircase, his eyes fell on Wingate of the 6th coming up, with Loader, another prefect, behind him. "Bunter!" exclaimed Wingate. He put on speed, coming up 2 at a time. "Oh, crikey!" gasped Bunter. He whirled round. Coker had halted, a little breathless. Coker stared blankly at Bunter coming back. "Oh, my hat!" cried Coker. "If that fat freak wants some more, stop him, Coker!" shouted Wingate. Coker stepped into the middle of the passage, facing Bunter as he came. He was not quite prepared for what followed. He expected to stop Bunter with perfect ease, but the wildly excited owl was desperate now. He lowered his head and charged Coker. Crash! Almost before Coker knew what was happening, a bullet head crashed into his waistcoat. Coker staggered. His hands, extended to grasp Bunter, sagged. He tottered. He gurgled. He guggled. Every ounce of wind inside Coker was driven out by that sudden impact on his waistcoat. Utterly heedless of Bunter, Coker staggered against the passage wall, clasped both hands to his waistcoat, and moaned and gurgled horribly. Bunter reeled for a moment from the shock, but only for a moment. Then he flew on and disappeared by the back staircase at the end of the fifth form passage. Wingate and Loader came speeding on. "You ass!" snapped Wingate as he passed Horace Coker. Bunter vanished, and after him Wingate and Loader, unheeded by Coker, who caressed his waistcoat and moaned. Whether Bunter escaped, Coker did not know and did not care. His internal convulsions were sufficient to occupy Coker's whole attention. The rising bell rang in the dewy morn. Greyfriars School turned out to a new day, and in the removed dormitory all eyes turned on one particular bed, Bunter's. That bed was vacant. It had not been slept in. "Bunter never came back to roost, then," said Bob Cherry. "The fat ass," said Harry Wharton. "He can't keep this game up." "What a game," remarked the bounder with a chuckle. "Puzzle, find Bunter." "The dear boy doesn't want to be bunked for pinching Prout's postal order," grinned Skinner. "But is even Bunter idiot enough to think that this game will do him any good?" "Blessed if I make the fat duffer out," said Harry Wharton. "Now he knows that the postal order isn't his, why the dickens doesn't he hand it over and get off with a licking? It can't be lost, as he admitted to Quelch that he had it. He'll be sacked if this goes on." It was a puzzle to all the remove. Bunter evidently was eluding a painful interview with the headmaster by the extraordinary expedient of disappearing and going under cover. But what use he thought it would be was a mystery. It was possible, of course, that he was not thinking at all, thinking not being his long suit. All the remove were anxious for news of Bunter when they came down from the dormitory. But there was no news of Bunter. The news had spread to all forms now, and almost every fellow at Greyfriars was asking the question, where was Bunter? "They'll have him soon," Skinner told the famous 5, when the school came out after prayers. "It doesn't look like it," answered Harry Wharton. "Wait till the breakfast bell rings," said Skinner. "Think Bunter could resist that?" "By gum, though, Bunter must be getting hungry," remarked Bob Cherry. "He had to cut supper last night. A fellow can't carry on without food." "Not Bunter, at any rate," said Nugent. But when the breakfast bell rang, there was still no sign of Billy Bunter. Undoubtedly the fat owl, wherever he was, must have heard the bell. All Greyfriars could hear it. That bell must have apprised him that it was a mealtime, and for Bunter to miss a meal was an unprecedented occurrence. But Skinner's prediction was not fulfilled. The breakfast bell did not draw Bunter from his lair. There was a vacant place at the remove table. At the head of that table sat Quelch, with a face reminiscent of a gargoyle. The remove were on their very best behaviour that morning. Quelch was only too clearly not in a mood for trifling. A visitor to the school, looking into the form room, might have supposed, quite erroneously, that the lower fourth were a model form, with no desire in life but to hang respectfully and attentively on the words of their form master. Such unusual goodness was rather a strain on the remove, and all were glad when the bell rang for break. In the break, there was a rumour of a spot of trouble below stairs. It was said that the house dame was making a fuss about a pie missing from the pantry, from which Harry Wharton and co. deduced that the owl of the remove was not quite so hungry as they had supposed, and it became more comprehensible how Bunter had been able to resist the lure of the breakfast bell. But where was Bunter? Out of class, Wingate, Loader, and other prefects were still looking for him. But Greyfriars School was a very extensive and rather rambling ancient place. There were disused attics and passages that seemed to lead nowhere in particular. A fellow who was determined to keep out of sight had at least a sporting chance, and Bunter, so far, seemed to be getting away with it. James Hobson, of the Shell, had a tremendous admiration for Claude Hoskins, his musical chum. Hoskins could compose music, or at least believed that he could, and Hobson shared his belief, though Hobby preferred to admire old Claude's compositions from a safe distance. It was only with difficulty that old Claude could ever persuade Hobby to listen to them. Claude Hoskins glanced up at the clock tower.
5 minutes to class, he said. My music teacher won't be in the music room yet. Come along with me now, old man, and I'll play over my capriccio to you.
Well, I was just going to ask young Wharton whether there was any news of that chap Bunter who's dodging about somewhere.
Eh? Who's Bunter?
A fat chap in the remove. They say his beak's in a fearful bait because he's dodging about out of sight.
Eh? Oh, is he?
Claude Hoskins evidently wasn't interested in a fat chap in the remove or in his beak.
Never mind him. Come on, Hobby. I shan't have time to play the whole thing through, but I can show you how it goes.
Claude Hoskins took his chum by the arm and led him away, as it were, to execution. Hobson suppressed a groan and submitted to his fate. The music room was at some distance from the form rooms. Claude, as they went down a long corridor, explained happily his theory of consecutive fifths, of which Hobson loyally tried to understand a few words without success. But as they reached the door of the music room, Claude broke off suddenly at a sound from that apartment. It was a sound as of somebody moving.
Oh, Scissors, has Flat come early? He exclaimed.
Hobson breathed more freely. If Mr. Flat, the music master, was already on the spot, Hoskins wouldn't be able to play over that capriccio after all. Claude Hoskins opened the door with a grunt. Hobson paused.
Well, if Flat's here, I'd better not come in, he remarked casually.
Hold on. No, he isn't, said Claude, staring about the room. I thought I heard somebody, didn't you?
I thought so. Isn't he here? Asked Hobson sadly.
Well, look.
Hobson looked. There was nobody to be seen in the music room.
Oh, a bit of luck, what? Said Claude cheerily. False alarm after all. Come in, Hobby, old chap. You'll remember afterwards that you were one of the first to hear my capriccio in G minor. I mean, in later years, old chap, when audiences at the Albert Hall are going wild about it.
Oh, yes. I say, I mustn't be late for class.
Now, listen.
Claude arranged his music on the piano desk, planted himself on the music stool, pushed back his cuffs as if he were going to box, and started. Hobson listened to the crash that followed. He had to. He dared not put his fingers to his ears, lest old Claude should spot him out of the corner of his eye. Hobson of the Shell stood up to it like a Trojan, while Claude Hoskins, who had rather a fancy for the loud pedal, dragged out of that old piano every discordant sound that it was capable of producing. With a final crash, as if old Claude was determined to knock the stuffing out of the piano in the last round, that composition in G minor ceased from troubling, and the weary were at rest. Hobson stood dazed. Claude swung round on the music stool and fixed him with a triumphant eye. He waited for his meed of praise, and Hobby, as soon as he recovered, would have ladled out the praise. But that moment of happy and glorious silence was broken by another voice, a very unexpected voice, exclaiming,
Oh, crikey!
And James Hobson and Claude Hoskins stared round blankly, quite astonished to hear the fat voice of Billy Bunter of the Remove proceeding from the music cupboard in the corner of the music room. "Bunter!" gasped Hobson. He dragged open the cupboard door. A fat figure, a fat face, and a pair of glimmering spectacles were revealed. It was the missing owl. The music room, it appeared, was the fat owl's mysterious refuge. Hobby and Hoskins remembered the sound they heard in the room as they came along. Evidently Bunter had dodged into the cupboard at the sound of footsteps. He had remained there, unseen and unsuspected by Hobby and Hoskins, till the effect of the capriccio in G minor had caused him, unintentionally, to reveal his presence.
I say, you fellows, keep it dark, exclaimed Bunter anxiously. Don't tell Quelch I'm here.
You fat ass.
Really, Hobson?
I've heard that you pinched a postal order from your beaked study.
No, I never took it at all. Besides, I lost it afterwards.
The quarter chimed from the clock tower, and Hobby gave a jump. "Oh, crumbs, I'm 15 minutes late for maths with Lassells. I shall have to cut, Claude." And Hobby, whether because Lassells would be shirty, or because he had reached the limit of human endurance, dashed out of the music room and fled. Claude Hoskins, taking no further heed of Bunter, went back to the music stool. Bunter blinked at him.
"Now, I say, was it you kicking up that awful row, Hoskins?"
Bunter had not seen the performance, but he had heard it. Emphatically, he had heard it. Claude Hoskins looked round at him again.
That what?"
he asked.
I mean, is there something wrong with the piano?"
asked Bunter.
"It was awful, wasn't it?"
Claude Hoskins stood looking at him fixedly.
I say, no, you ain't going on, are you?" asked Bunter anxiously. "More than a fellow can stand, you know. I mean, if you want to play the piano, why not play a tune or something?"
Still Claude Hoskins did not answer.
"Don't tell anybody I'm here," went on Bunter. "If the music master's coming, keep him away from this cupboard, won't you, old chap? But I say, you might give a fellow a rest. You've made my head ache thumping the thing like that, all the keys at once."
Still, in silence, Claude Hoskins turned to the piano. From the piano top he picked up a volume of Beethoven's sonatas. It was a large and somewhat weighty volume. Taking it in both hands, Hoskins came towards Bunter. "Whop! Yahoo!" roared Bunter, in surprise and anguish, as their hefty volume suddenly established contact with the fattest head at Greyfriars School. "Whop!" Bunter bounded out of the cupboard. He flew across the music room. Bunter bounded through the doorway. A terrific swipe just missed him as he bounded, and Hoskins, overbalancing with the force of the swipe, stumbled over and landed on the floor. Bunter had a split second, and he made the most of it. He went down the corridor at about 60 mph. By the time Hoskins scrambled up, still grasping Beethoven with a vengeful intent, Billy Bunter had vanished round a corner. Hoskins gave it up at that, and went back to the piano. But the guilty flee when no man pursueth, and Bunter, still in terror of swiping sonatas, charged on wildly and hurtled out into the quad in a breathless state. Everybody but Hoskins was in third school, and the quad was deserted. But though neither beaks nor boys were to be seen, a gnarled countenance stared at Billy Bunter from the direction of the porter's lodge.
"My eye,"
said Gosling.
"It's that there Bunter."
Billy Bunter came to a panting halt, pumping in breath. He had lost his refuge in the music room, and he had to find another before eyes fell on him. Then he became aware that eyes were already on him, as William Gosling, the ancient porter of Greyfriars, bore down on him, and a clutching hand grasped a fat shoulder.
"Oh!" gasped Bunter. "Let go!"
"Gotcha," said Gosling. "Looking for you all over the school, eh, is? Now I gotcha."
"Beast!"
"You come along of me,"
said Gosling. The horny hand on his shoulder led Bunter back towards the house. But the fat owl was desperate. A sudden fist jammed into William Gosling's ancient ribs. "Ooh, ooh!" gasped Gosling, taken by surprise. His grasp relaxed for a moment, and that moment was enough for Billy Bunter. He tore his fat shoulder away and flew.
"My eye! Here, you, stop!"
roared Gosling. Bunter flew on. But fast on his track came Gosling. Bunter gave another blink behind and scrambled frantically up the cloister's wall at the spot where he clambered the previous day. On that occasion he had clambered slowly and laboriously, but fear lends wings. Bunter went over that old wall almost like a bird. Gosling came charging up. He grabbed at disappearing fat legs. His grasp closed on one leg.
"Ah, let go!"
yelled Bunter.
"Gotcha!"
gasped Gosling. But he had not quite got Bunter. He had captured one leg, but Bunter kicked out frantically with the other. The roar that came from Gosling as a heel banged on his ancient nose would have done credit to the Bull of Bashan, famed of old time for his roaring. Gosling let go Bunter and tottered away, clasping his nose, which felt as if it had been driven into his head like a nail. Not for quite some time did Gosling feel equal to report to Mr. Quelch that the missing member of his form had turned up, and was now outside the school, hitting the open spaces.
Hello. The esteemed idiotic Bunter.
The Remove footballers were rolling over to Highcliffe in the large estate vehicle known as the Break. The Junior 11 and 7 or 8 other fellows were packed in, and there was a cheery buzz of talk on the subject of soccer, and the prospects of beating Courtney's team at Highcliffe, and not a word on the latest topic at Greyfriars. Sad to relate, Harry Wharton and co. had forgotten all about Billy Bunter and his antics and his tribulations. They had heard Gosling report to Mr. Quelch in third school the latest development in the Bunter Odyssey. They were aware that the fat owl, like the much-enduring Ulysses, was still on his travels. But at that moment, soccer filled their minds, and Bunter was forgotten. Now they were suddenly reminded of him, when Bob Cherry spotted a fat figure at the roadside, waving a fat paw.
I say, you fellows, stop, will you?"
yelled Bunter as the Break drew abreast.
"I want a lift."
Harry Wharton signed to the driver to stop. Billy Bunter rolled out into the road and blinked up at staring faces. "You howling ass," said the captain of the Remove. "What are you doing here?"
I want a lift in that Break," howled Bunter. "I can't walk all the way to Highcliffe."
"You can't come to Highcliffe, fathead, with the prefects after you," said Vernon Smith.
"I jolly well can," hooted Bunter. "I can't go back to Greyfriars till after dark, or they'll cop me. Oh, look here, you fellows, give a fellow a lift. Nice sort of pals you are, turning a fellow down when he's in a jam."
"Oh, let him hop on," said Bob Cherry. "He can stand round and cheer our goals at Highcliffe. The Prees won't think of looking for him there." The fat owl was allowed to hop on, and the Break rolled on its way. He wedged himself into a seat and blinked round at grinning faces. The present circumstances appeared to Bunter tragic, but to the other fellows they seemed rather comic.
I say, you fellows, got any toffee?"
asked Bunter.
"No." "Got anything to eat?" "No." "Oh, law."
"Bunter's cut tiffin," remarked Bob. "Poor old Bunter. He must be feeling like any other fellow after 3 weeks in an open boat at sea. Look here, Bunter, if you go back, Quelch will let you have some dinner before the head bunks you."
"Beast!"
"What are you keeping up this idiotic game for?" demanded Johnny Bull. "Do you think you can keep that postal order, or what?"
"Think I want to keep a postal order that doesn't belong to me, you beast?" howled Bunter.
"Then why haven't you handed it over?"
"I haven't got it!" yelled Bunter. "Don't I keep on telling you it was lost?"
"But you owned up to Quelch that you had it," cried Johnny. "He told us so."
"I didn't say I had it. I said I'd fetch it from my study,"
roared back Bunter. "Well, that's the same thing, isn't it?" asked Frank Nugent, staring at the fat owl.
"'Tain't," hooted Bunter. "Quelch was taking me to the head, and he had hold of my shoulder. I said that to make him let go, see?"
"Oh, holy smoke!"
"That was strategy," explained Bunter. "I had to make the beast let go, or you'd have hiked me into Dr. Locke. He let go all right when he thought I was going to fetch the postal order from my study. See?"
The removed fellows gazed at Bunter. "You owned up that you'd got the postal order when you hadn't, just to get away from Quelch," articulated Harry Wharton.
"I'd have said anything to get away from Quelch,"
explained Bunter. "Oh, scissors! Bunter, you unlimited chump," said Harry Wharton. "Can't you see that now you've owned up to having it, Quelch and the head can't have any doubt about it, and you'll be bunked if you don't hand it over?"
"How can I hand it over when I haven't got it? Talk sense, old chap."
"You've made Quelch and the head think you've got it," said Wharton.
"Well, you never know what a schoolmaster may think. Silly lot," said Bunter. "But it'll be all right when the postal order's found. I think you fellows might chuck football just for once and put in the afternoon hunting for it."
"Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha!" They all laughed.
"Oh, no, don't cackle. I'm not joking,"
howled Bunter. Hello, there's Loader!" exclaimed Bob Cherry. A cyclist had come in sight, heading for the high road and the Greyfriars break. There was a howl of terror from Bunter. He cast one startled blink round, dived and disappeared among innumerable legs and feet.
I say, you fellows, don't tell Loader I'm here,"
he gasped. Loader came out on the road, waving his hand to the brake to stop. The vehicle stopped, and Loader came alongside. He was not looking in a good temper. Probably he wasn't enjoying putting in a half-holiday looking for an elusive owl. He rewarded the removites with a scowl when they obligingly stopped for him. "Seen Bunter about anywhere?" snapped Loader. "Oh, yes, we saw him on this road about half a mile back," answered the bounder with cheery coolness. "Oh, good." Loader of the 6th whirled round his machine and pedalled back along the road. Billy Bunter emerged from a sea of feet, gasping for breath. It was one more narrow escape for the fugitive owl. But a miss was as good as a mile, and Billy Bunter, still at large, rolled on to Highcliffe with the footballers.
"I say, Caterpillar, old chap."
Rupert de Courcy of the Highcliffe 4th gave a slight start. Then he gazed at Billy Bunter of the Greyfriars Remove. De Courcy was Caterpillar to his friends. In that list was not included the name of William George Bunter. So, no doubt, it was a slight surprise to him when a fat thumb poked him in the ribs, and he turned to be addressed by Billy Bunter as
"Caterpillar, old chap."
But the Caterpillar was always urbane. He was about to enter the changing-room when Billy Bunter happened. He paused in polite inquiry.
"I say, glad to see you again, old fellow," said Bunter.
"Oh, have we met before?"
asked the Caterpillar.
"I'm Bunter."
"Oh, really? So pleased to meet you, Bunter. Goodbye."
Rupert de Courcy moved into the doorway, but a fat paw clutched his arm before he could escape into the changing-room.
I say, hold on," exclaimed Bunter. "Just listen to a fellow for a minute."
"Oh, I'd listen for hours with real pleasure, Grunter."
"Bunter."
Bunter. Only they want me to play football," explained the Caterpillar. "There's a team here from Greyfriars."
"Oh, really, de Courcy?"
"Oh, there's Courtney calling me. I shall have to go in and change. Goodbye."
The Caterpillar jerked his arm loose and disappeared into the changing-room.
"Beast!"
hissed Bunter. Billy Bunter did not quite believe that the Caterpillar had forgotten his fat existence. It was only a few weeks since, on an occasion when Harry Wharton and co. had come over to tea in number 3 study with their Highcliffe friends, that the fat owl had succeeded in wedging into the party. Bunter had never forgotten that tea in number 3 study at Highcliffe. The Caterpillar's teas were lavish. But evidently there was nothing doing so far as the Caterpillar was concerned. The beast was playing in the match anyhow, so he wouldn't be free for more than an hour and a half, even if he did feel disposed to ask Bunter to tea in his study. And that, Bunter couldn't help realizing, seemed impossible. He blinked at the footballers as they came out and went into the field. He rolled away to the doorway of the house. There was a shout from the direction of the football field. Goal! Herbert Vernon Smith had scored in the first few minutes. Bunter didn't even turn his head. He was thinking of number 3 study in the Highcliffe 4th, and debating in his mind whether he could make the venture. At Greyfriars there would have been no hesitation. Bunter hesitated to transfer his predatory manners and customs to another school. Yet, 10 to 1, there were good things galore in the Caterpillar's study. Bunter finally rolled in. He knew his way, having been there before. In a few minutes he arrived at the door of number 3 study. He rolled into that study and shut the door. He gave one blink from the study window. It gave a view of the football field in the distance. They were going it, and would be going it for well over an hour yet. Really, it was as safe as houses. Having blinked at the distant footballers, Bunter rolled across to the study cupboard, which, as well as he remembered, had exuded all sorts of good things on the occasion when he'd wedged into the tea party. Almost certainly it contained good things for tea. Bunter fervently hoped that it did. All fears were relieved when he opened the cupboard door. The first object that met his eyes and his spectacles was a large cake. There were several paper bags, which he soon ascertained to contain eclairs and meringues. There was a box of chocolate creams and a packet of toffee. There were several pots of jam, one of marmalade, and one of honey. If any hesitation had lingered in Bunter's fat mind, it vanished now. He was hungry, fearfully hungry. The spot where his dinner should have been was an aching void. Bunter's emotions were those of a pig in clover. He began standing at the cupboard, but when half the big cake and a few meringues had taken the edge off his appetite, he sat down to it, transferring the provender from the study cupboard to the study table. Generously he left a few of the paper bags in the cupboard. He wasn't going to wolf the whole supply. That, at least, was his first idea. But when the liberal supply on the table had gone on the downward path, his eyes and spectacles turned on the cupboard again. By that time Bunter was feeling a little full, and he was very sticky and shiny, and a little short of breath, but he was capable of further exertions. He rolled back to the cupboard. On the football field, Harry, Wharton and Co. were busy, and had quite forgotten Bunter. In the caterpillar's study, Billy Bunter was equally busy, and had quite forgotten Harry, Wharton and Co. The removed footballers were having a good time. Bunter was having the time of his life. But he slowed down at last. Even Bunter had his limit, though it was an extensive one. He sat down in the caterpillar's comfortable armchair, with a pot of jam on his fat knees, a tablespoon in his fat hand. He leaned his fat head back on soft leather. Bunter had had a hectic time of late, and with that gargantuan feed to wind up with, he felt that he needed a rest. So he rested. His eyes closed behind his spectacles. With his eyes shut and his mouth open, Billy Bunter slept and snored. Goal! It was a cheery roar on Little Side at Highcliffe. It was followed by the whistle. It had been a good game, hotly contested on both sides. The removed footballers came off the field winners by 3-2, which was eminently satisfactory to Harry, Wharton and Co., and they were a cheery crowd in the changing room. But Courtenay and Co. were good losers, and all was merry and bright. It was not until the Greyfriars party were going to their break that Bob Cherry remembered Billy Bunter, and glanced round for him. But no rotund figure was in sight. No spectacles glimmered in the sun. Bunter was not to be seen. "Well, he's gone, I suppose," remarked Bob. Wharton glanced around. "I expect he cleared off pretty early. Blessed if I know what he came for. He wouldn't want to watch soccer." And the footballers, dismissing the fat owl once more from mind, departed. Courtenay and the caterpillar waved a parting hand from the gate. "Jolly good game," Frank Courtenay remarked, as he walked back to the house with his chum, after the Greyfriars fellow were gone. "Yes, topping," agreed the caterpillar. "I was going to stand a spread to celebrate the jolly old victory, if any," said the caterpillar, "and as I've asked the fellows, we'd better stand it to celebrate the jolly old defeat." "What?" Courtenay laughed. There was no victory to celebrate, but the Highcliffe footballers were ready, indeed eager, to attend the spread in number 3 study. Courtenay and the caterpillar arrived at that study with a crowd of fellows at their heels, all happily anticipative. A strange and unexpected sound from the study greeted their ears as they arrived. "What on earth's that?" asked Courtenay in astonishment. They stared into the study. It was quite an unexpected sight that met their astonished eyes. They stared blankly at a fat figure reclining, not to say sprawling, in the caterpillar's armchair. Billy Bunter's eyes were closed behind his big spectacles. His mouth was open. The pot of jam on his fat knees had exuded most of its contents over his trousers. Billy Bunter had fully intended going while the going was good. But Bunter, once asleep, did not wake easily. There he was, sticky, shiny, jammy, and on the table lay the mere wreckage of a spread that had been intended for a dozen fellows. He was fast asleep, and on his fat face, as he slept, was a smile. The spread was gone. Billy Bunter, rather unluckily for himself, wasn't. But as yet unconscious of peril, the fat owl of Greyfriars happily slept and snored. "Oh, my hat," said Courtenay blankly. "He's bolted everything in the study and gone to sleep." They gazed at Bunter. A crowd of juniors in the doorway gazed at him. They had come to a spread in number 3 study, one of the caterpillar's lavish spreads. Evidently the spread had already taken place. Only the wreckage of that spread remained for the hungry footballers. They gazed at Bunter, their gaze growing more and more expressive. Undisturbed by the sound of voices, the fat owl snored happily on. The caterpillar stepped behind the armchair, grasped the back, and tilted it. There was a wild splutter as Billy Bunter rolled out on the carpet. Bunter sat up, still spluttering, and blinked round him. "Oh!" gasped Bunter. He realized that he'd left it late. He read the danger signals in the crowd of wrathful faces staring at him. He scrambled to his feet.
I say, you fellows, I'm just going."
"You are," agreed the caterpillar. He grasped a fat neck and slewed Bunter round. Bunter flew from his foot like a fat football. "Yaroo!" roared Bunter as he flew. "Pass!" shouted the caterpillar. Courtenay's foot caught Bunter in its turn and passed him to the doorway. Billy Bunter had had the feast. After it came the reckoning. There was quite a scramble for Bunter in the passage. Every fellow there seemed eager to get in a kick. How many kicks he collected before he escaped down the stairs, Bunter never knew. It seemed to him like millions. It was a sore and suffering owl that bolted out into the road. Clink. Harry Wharton and Frank Nugent both looked up, startled. It was Prep in the removed studies. Wharton and Nugent in number 1 study were sitting at the table with their books. The sudden clink at their study window was quite unexpected. "What the dickens?" exclaimed Harry. "Sounded like a stone," said Nugent in wonder. Clink! "Oh, there it is again." The 2 juniors rose from the study table. Amazing as it was, and quite unaccountable, that clink told of the contact of a pebble on a pane of glass. Someone, inexplicably, was out in the quad, after lock-up, in the dark, buzzing stones at the window. Crack! "Oh, my hat, there goes the glass!" exclaimed Nugent. "The howling ass!" exclaimed Harry. "Who the deuce—" He cut across to the window and threw up the sash. The next moment he gave a howl. "Ow!" A 4th missile was whizzing up. Wharton had thrown up the sash in time to save the glass, but the natural consequence was that the pebble whizzed in at the open window. It caught the captain of the remove on the tip of his nose. "Ow!" repeated Wharton. "What blithering idiot—" He leaned out of the window and stared down with a wrathful face and shouted, "Stop that, you howling ass, whoever you are!"
"Oh, really, Wharton?"
came a fat squeak from the dimness. "Bunter!"
"I say, you fellows!"
Wharton stared down and caught the glimmer of a big pair of spectacles in the starlight. "What are you buzzing stones at this window for, you footling fathead? You've cracked a pane."
"Well, I had to make you hear."
"You've got me on the nose," yelled Wharton. A fat cachinnation floated up from below. "You fat, gurgling ass!"
"I say, old chap."
"What do you want?"
"I want to get in,"
came the answering squeak. "Go and tap at Quelch's window if you want to get in.
It'll be all right if you hand him that postal order.
You jolly well know it's lost.
I jolly well don't.
If that's what you call pally, Wharton, when a fellow's in a jam, I can't get in anywhere unless a pal lets me in. Look here, you come down and unlock the door of our lobby, see? Look, I've got to sleep somewhere, haven't I? It'd be all right by this time if you'd found that postal order, but you would play football instead. No. I say, don't shut that window. Be a pal, old chap.
Harry Wharton did not close the window. He was not insensible to the woes of the fugitive owl. Unless he could get in, his lodging was going to be out on the cold, cold ground. On the other hand, any fellow discovered helping Bunter in his extraordinary game of eluding beaks and prefects was certain to be dealt with grimly and efficiently by Mr. Quelch. "Look here, you ass, I can't go down during prep," said Wharton at last.
Beast! I say, Nugent, old chap, will you go down and open the lobby door? You ain't funky like Wharton, old fellow.
"Fathead," was Nugent's reply. "You blithering, burbling bloater," said Harry Wharton. "I'll cut into the lobby after prep and unlock the door. That's all I can do." "Look out!" exclaimed Nugent suddenly, as he caught sight of a moving figure in the dimness below. "Somebody's coming."
Oh, crikey!
There was a patter of feet. Billy Bunter bolted. Wharton and Nugent backed promptly out of sight. "Quelch!" breathed Nugent. From the dimness below, voices floated up.
"I'm sure that I heard someone calling, Wingate."
It was the remove master's voice.
"You heard?"
Yes, sir. I think it was Bunter's voice.
"I have no doubt that the foolish and troublesome boy will return, and he will doubtless attempt to communicate with some other boy to be let in."
Most likely, sir.
"Wingate, I have no doubt that he is at hand. Let us look round."
Certainly, sir.
Footsteps and voices receded. Harry Wharton quietly closed the study window. "The fathead," said Nugent. "I'll get that door unlocked for him after prep," said Harry. "It's 6 on the bags, if I'm spotted at it."
Oh, crikey!
breathed Billy Bunter. He breathed that exclamation inaudibly. He dared not make a sound. It was very dark in the quad, but Bunter at the moment was sitting dismally on a bench under one of the old elms. By that time the lobby door was unlocked, and there was a way in, but with Quelch on the prowl, Bunter dared not approach the house. Dismally, disconsolately, dolorously, he waited for the lights of the house to go out. Once all was dark, and that unspeakable beast Quelch gone to bed, it would be safe to make the venture. But a sound of footsteps and a murmur of voices from the shadows apprised him that the beast had by no means gone to bed yet. Bunter heard Quelch say,
"If either a door or a window is found unfastened—"
The voices passed on. Quelch and Gosling passed within 6 or 7 feet of a scared fat owl, blissfully ignorant of his proximity. Billy Bunter shook a fat fist after them as they went. "Beasts!" groaned Bunter. The lobby door would be unlocked. There was no doubt that Wharton would have done that for him. And that indescribable beast Quelch was going to make a round of the house, examining doors and windows. He would find that lobby door unlocked. He would know exactly why, and he would wait there for a fat owl to walk into his hands. Bunter sat on the bench and groaned. Almost Bunter was tempted to give himself up for the sake of a square meal and a warm bed. But if he fell into the hands of authority before that wretched postal order was found, it was the sack. He just sat and groaned. One by one, the lighted windows in the house went dark. Common room windows no longer showed a gleam. Even Quelch's window disappeared in blackness. Beaks, at last, were gone to bed. Now all would have been safe if only that unlimited beast Quelch wasn't on the watch in the junior lobby. But Bunter knew that the beast was, waiting for him. He rose from the bench at last and rolled away to the house. He was going nowhere near the junior lobby, but some door or window might be negotiable. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. Anything was better than sitting on that bench in the thickening mist and thinking how awfully hungry he was. All was dark and silent and still as the fat owl prowled round the house. He was prowling under the sixth form windows on the ground floor when a sudden sound came to his ears, and he jumped in alarm. In the night silence, it came clearly and distinctly. It was the sound of an opening window. Bunter's fat heart almost missed a beat. It was a sixth form window that opened not 3 yards from him. He blotted himself close to the wall in the angle of a buttress, his fat heart thumping. Deep silence followed the sound of the sash pulling up. Was it some beastly prefect looking out? Bunter peered round the buttress. All he could see of the window was a dim glimmer of glass, with a black space below where it was open. But in that black space he made out dimly, like a shadow, a head and shoulders. Bunter's fat head popped back like a tortoise into its shell. Then another sound came faintly to his fat ears from the window. It was a faint, rustling, brushing sort of sound. He realized that the sixth form man was climbing, cautiously and stealthily, out of the window. "Oh!" breathed Bunter. He understood now, and he grinned. It was a fellow getting out of bounds at a late hour. Bunter remembered what he knew or had heard about Loader of the Sixth and his secret manners and customs. His eyes gleamed behind his spectacles. This was luck. The breaker of bounds must have left the window unfastened for his return. Bunter grinned from ear to ear. Now that he had a way in, it was rather amusing to think of Quelch sitting in the dark, waiting. Waiting for nothing. The fat owl crept to the window. He reached up to the stone sill with his fat hands. Bunter clambered desperately. Another tremendous effort, and he was on the sill, where for a long minute he pumped in breath before making further efforts. Bunter inserted fat paws under the sash, and it rose easily. He heaved himself in. After all his trials and tribulations, the fugitive owl was under a roof again, and assured of a lodging for the night. Bunter was hungry. He drew the blind carefully over the window, groped to the switch, and turned on the light. As soon as the light was on, he knew in whose study he was. Loader's. That, as Loader was absent, was an agreeable discovery, for Gerald Loader was a fellow who did himself well, very well, in the foodstuffs line. Bunter opened the study cupboard, blinked into it, and exclaimed, "Prime!" with a grin of happy satisfaction. There was half a cold veal pie, there was half a cake, there was a plateful of scones, there were biscuits. There was, in fact, enough for a supper for even Bunter. He lost no time. How long Loader was likely to be absent he didn't know, but the experience at Highcliffe had not been lost on Bunter. He was not going to linger. The demolition of Loader's provisions was not a matter of long duration. In such matters, Bunter was a quick worker. He helped himself with rapid hands. The veal pie disappeared in record time. Bunter was about to follow this up with the biscuits, but he reflected in time that a hungry day stretched before him. With unusual foresight, Bunter crammed the biscuits into his pockets and followed up with the cake instead. Then, one by one, the scones followed the cake and the veal pie. There were a dozen scones, and by the time the 12th had vanished, Bunter was feeling fairly satisfied.
Oh, golly! That's the end of side 3. This is side 4.
Bunter was also feeling very sleepy. He cast a blink towards Loader's bed. The bed looked very comfortable and very inviting, but the fat owl was not thinking of going to sleep in that bed as he had in the caterpillar's armchair at Highcliffe. He was only thinking of helping himself to some of the bedclothes. Even Bunter could learn by experience. It had been chilly in the music room the previous night. He turned back the bed, jammed Loader's pillow under a fat arm, and extracted 2 blankets, which he draped over a fat shoulder. He switched off the light in Loader's study, closed the door softly, and rolled away with a cautious roll. Stealthily, Bunter made his way to the form rooms. He stopped at the door of the 4th form room. Quelch, who was a careful and methodical gentleman, always locked his form room door. Capper, who was neither careful nor methodical, seldom or never did. Bunter, as he expected, found the door of Capper's form room open. He rolled in and closed it after him. It was about half an hour later that Mr. Quelch, after a long, tiresome and fruitless vigil in the junior lobby, gave it up, carefully locking the door Harry Wharton had unlocked, so that Bunter, if he wanted to get in, would have to knock and deliver himself up. He went off to bed. A little later still, a slinking figure dodged among the shadows of the dark quad, and Loader of the 6th arrived under his study window. He was surprised and startled to find the sash wider open than he'd left it. He stood and stared at it, his heart palpitating. Somebody had been there. Discovery of his nocturnal excursions would have meant dire results for the sixth-form sportsman. Pub crawling was an amusement that had to be kept very dark by a fellow who didn't want to catch a morning train for home. He peered into the study. It was dark and silent. He clambered in at last, his heart beating unpleasantly. He drew the blind carefully over the window and switched on the light. Then he guessed. "That fat scoundrel," breathed Loader. His cupboard was wide open and empty of foodstuffs. Only a sea of crumbs on the floor remained to tell the tale of what had become of them. His bed was dismantled, the blankets and pillow gone. Gladly would Loader have picked up his ash-plant cane and gone in search of the owl of the remove. But he did not think of doing so. Loader had his secrets to keep, and he had to make the best of it.
"Temple," said Mr. Capper. "Yes, sir?" "Kindly get the large map of Europe, Temple," said Mr. Capper.
Temple crossed the form room to the map cupboard. Little did Mr. Capper dream, as he spoke to Temple of the 4th, that his voice reached a pair of fat ears and caused alarm and despondency in the map cupboard. Temple grasped the handle of the door to turn it. To his surprise, it did not turn. It was quite a large handle on the map cupboard door, and gave plenty of room for grip. Temple gripped it hard and strove to turn it, but it did not stir. It was exactly as if it was held inside. The oaken door was solid, and that solid oak hid from Temple's eyes a fat and terrified owl who was grasping the door-handle with both hands to prevent him from getting the door open. "Oh, Gad!" murmured Temple. "What's the matter with the dashed thing?" It was quite perplexing. Mr. Capper, standing beside the blackboard with a pointer in his hand, glanced across at Temple over his spectacles.
What is the matter, Temple?"
"The handle's jammed or something, sir," answered Temple. "I can't get it to turn."
"Oh, nonsense," said Mr. Capper testily. "Please bring me the map at once, Temple."
Temple put both hands to it and put his beef into it. Then at last it began to turn slowly. Inside that map cupboard, Billy Bunter grasped his end of the door-handle, desperately resisting. As Temple turned it to the right to open it, Bunter strove to keep it well to the left, to keep it shut. But now that Temple had both hands to the task, he was slowly but surely gaining the upper hand. The rest of the 4th watched Temple curiously. His face was pink with exertion as he strove with the door-handle on the map cupboard. It was quite an unusual occurrence, and it seemed inexplicable. Mr. Capper watched him impatiently. Perhaps he suspected Temple of wasting time owing to lack of keenness on that interesting and important subject, geography. It was not uncommon for little Mr. Capper's leg to be pulled in his form room.
"Temple!"
rapped Mr. Capper.
Yes, sir,"
gasped Temple.
"Open that cupboard immediately and bring here the large map of Europe."
"Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's moving now, sir. It seems stiff somehow."
Temple, with a double-handed wrench, got that handle turned at last. Then he pulled. Bunter held on desperately. So desperate was Bunter's hold on the door-handle that Temple's pull from outside failed to shift the door. He pulled and dragged, growing pinker and pinker. But the door did not stir.
"Temple!"
Mr. Capper's voice was getting angry.
"Why do you not open that cupboard, Temple?"
"Oh, Gad, it won't come open, sir," spluttered Temple.
"Nonsense! It's jammed somehow, sir. Something seems to be holding it inside."
"Absurd!" Temple wrenched. The door yielded about half an inch, but it was only for a split second. It jammed shut again.
"Oh, crikey!"
gasped Temple, quite taken aback by that peculiar phenomenon. Mr. Capper, frowning, strode across the form room. He pushed Temple aside and grasped the door-handle of the cupboard himself.
"Stand back, Temple. I will open the door."
Mr. Capper grasped and pulled. He had little doubt that Temple had been wasting time. But his expression changed as he pulled at the door. It did not come open. He pulled in vain. Temple watched him. The whole fourth form watched him. It was quite a singular episode, and a good deal more interesting than geography.
"Upon my word,"
gasped Mr. Capper.
"It seems to be jammed somehow, Temple, as you said."
And Mr. Capper, not to be beaten by that obstinate door, grasped the handle with both hands, planted his feet firmly on the floor, and tugged. That did it. The hapless fat owl inside, exerting himself to the uttermost, had been able to resist Temple, but Mr. Capper was too much for him. That terrific double-handed tug by Mr. Capper wrenched the door wide open, so suddenly that Mr. Capper, taken by surprise by his own success, staggered back, lost his balance, and sat down on the floor of the form room with a resounding bump. Gasped Mr. Capper as he bumped.
"Oh, Gad!"
stuttered Temple at what followed. Forth from the map cupboard came a fat figure with fat hands still clinging to the door handle, no less than William George Bunter of the Remove, dragged headlong out of the cupboard by the opening door. "Bunter!" roared all the fourth.
"That fat-ass Bunter! Oh, that's where he was hiding! Ha! 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 Ha!"
Billy Bunter blinked at Mr. Capper, sitting on the floor and gazing at him like a form master in a dream.
Oh, crikey!"
gasped Bunter.
"Ha! Ha! Ha! Ha!
Bunter!" stuttered Mr. Capper. He scrambled breathlessly up. "Yeah, boy, stop!" Bunter flew. He flew across the form room for the door to the corridor. After him flew Mr. Capper. "Bunter, stop! I shall take you to your form master. Stop!" roared Mr. Capper as he rushed. "Do you hear me, Bunter? Bunter, boy, stop!" Bunter tore open the form room door with Mr. Capper's extended hand within 6 inches of his collar. He bounded into the corridor. Mr. Capper, panting, rushed out after him in time to see a fat flying figure vanish round a corner. Billy Bunter, going strong, was on his travels again. Coker of the Fifth frowned. "It's pretty thick," he said. Potter and Green looked at him over the study table. They were at tea in Coker's study. Coker had been looking thoughtful. He'd been silent since they sat down to tea. Potter and Green hoped that he would keep it up.
"I said it's pretty thick," Coker repeated. "Not the sort of thing that ought to happen at Greyfriars. It's 2 or 3 days now since Bunter cut it, and I say it's too thick."
"Oh," said Potter and Green. Coker, it seemed, was interested in the amazing antics of Billy Bunter of the Remove, now the reigning topic in the school.
"That fat tick had the cheek to park himself in this study first of all," he said, "and after he was rooted out and the prees got after him, he butted me in the bread-basket."
"Ha, ha, ha," contributed Potter and Green involuntarily.
Oh, you think that's funny, do you? Well, it's too thick. From what I hear, that young smudge bagged something from his big study, and he's going to be bunked when they snaffle him. Well, the sooner the better, in my opinion."
"Oh, quite," said Potter. "Pass the jam."
"All the prefects are after him," said Coker derisively, "and a fat lot of good they are. As the prees can't do anything, I'm taking the matter in hand."
"I've been thinking." "You have?" asked Potter, as if surprised.
"Yes, I have. I'm going to hand that young sweep over to the head. And now I've thought it out, I know how."
"Know where he is?" asked Green.
"Nobody knows where he is, fathead, or they'd have had him before this."
"You're going to collar him without knowing where he is?" asked Potter blandly, with a private wink at Green.
"Exactly," said Coker calmly. "Bunter was rooted out of Capper's form room this morning. Capper ought to have grabbed him, but he let him get away. Mary saw him scooting up the stairs afterward, the housemaid, you know. That fat idiot crashed into her Hoover the other day and bottled it. Well, Mary saw him scooting up. Lots of fellows know. He never came down again. He's up in the attic somewhere. Lots of odd spots where a fellow can park himself out of sight. The prees have been rooting after him, but there's one thing they haven't thought of, and I have." Coker snorted and went on triumphantly. "What about food for Bunter? A fellow can't live without food, especially a greedy little pig like Bunter. He can hide as long as he jolly well likes, but he'll have to come out of his hideout for food."
"They'll get him if he shows up."
"He won't show up," explained Coker. "He'll sneak out late after everybody's gone to bed. That's what he did the first night when he snooped a pie. And that's where I come in. He's somewhere up in the attics, and to get anywhere with us, Grub, he'll have to come down past the study landing. And that's where he's going to be collared.
Oh, said Potter and Green together.
I fancy I'd better do it alone, said Coker. Sorry and all that. I'd like your company, and you're my pals, but you're rather fatheads, if you don't mind my mentioning it.
Oh, gasped Potter, not at all.
I mean to say, this is a matter of strategy, and I'm going to handle it alone.
Coker spoke decidedly. Potter closed one eye, the furthest from Coker, at Green. Green just contrived to change a chuckle into a cough.
Yeah, sorry and all that. You fellows stick in bed tonight. Leave it to me. I've the brains for it, you know. I'll tell you about it afterwards.
Oh, do, gasped Potter and Green.
Leave it at that, said Coker.
With great cordiality, Potter and Green left it at that. Dark and gloomy, and more than a little draughty and chilly, was the study landing, when 11 strokes boomed out from the clock tower of Greyfriars in the misty night. It was not only dark and gloomy, it was, in fact, as black as a hat. Horace Coker could not have seen his hand before his face if he had had any fancy to do so. His fingers and toes were chilly. He was sleepy, but he was a sticker. Having set his hand to the plough, as it were, he was not going to turn back. But it was not a pleasant vigil. It was unpleasant. He was at least cheered by the reflection that he was going to do what the Beaks and the sixth-form prefects had failed to do. That fat tick Bunter of the Remove had evaded pursuit and capture for 2 or 3 days, setting authority at defiance, causing no end of commotion. That, in Coker's opinion, was a scandalous state of things, and he, Horace James Coker, was going to put a stop to it. He knew how. That fat tick was absolutely certain to come scouting out for grub during the night. If he did, he had to materialize on that landing. He wouldn't see Coker in the dark, and neither would Coker see him, but Coker could hear him and grab. It was as simple as that. Suddenly Coker gave a start. He had heard nothing. If he had, it was so faint a sound that he could not define it, but he had a feeling that he was no longer alone in the dark. It was rather a creepy feeling. But Coker was not given to nerves. He listened intently, quite wide awake now. Again, the faintest of sounds, a sort of faint brushing sound, it seemed to Coker. Someone was there, on that vast landing, in the dark. He was sure of that. But whoever it was making next to no sound. At one spot on the landing, backing to the old oaken balustrade, was a long settee. Coker was standing within a few yards of it, as he leaned on the old oak rail. And he was as good as certain that what he had heard was the sound of somebody sitting down, carefully and stealthily, on that settee. This was rather a puzzle. Bunter was fat and lazy, no doubt, but it was hardly the time and place for him to sit down and rest. Still, Coker could believe his ears. Someone was quite close at hand in the dark, and that someone had sat down on the settee. It was time for Coker to go into action. Further caution was unnecessary and might waste precious moments. Coker rushed. A split second, and his grasp was on an unseen figure on the settee. There was no time, no chance for that unseen figure to dodge. Coker had him. He heard a startled gasp as his clutch closed. His clutch closed like a steel vice. Coker's hands were extensive and strong, and there was plenty of beef in his grasp. "Gotcha!" panted Coker. He had got him. There was no mistake about that. His stout right arm was round an unseen neck, tightening like the grip of a boa constrictor, and he must have almost choked the unhappy victim. His left hand grabbed an arm. Coker had got him. Utterly came in suffocated accents. The unseen figure struggled frantically. Coker had hardly expected that. He had not looked for resistance from a fat tick like Bunter. But he was quite ready to deal with it. That choking right arm constricted the hapless victim's neck yet more tightly, and Coker's left was like a pair of pincers on the unseen arm. Gurgled the unseen one, apparently trying to speak. With unexpected strength on the part of a fat tick, the unseen one gave grasp for grasp, and Coker, to his surprise, staggered backwards. But he did not let go. That bear-like hug never slackened. He had him, and he was keeping him. You silly fathead, chuck it, panted Coker. I've got you. The unseen one did not chuck it. Exerting strength that was quite amazing in a fat tick, he pitched Coker off and dragged his suffering neck free. Coker heard him panting wildly for breath. But Coker was off only for a second. He was not giving that fat tick a chance to dodge away in the dark. He fairly hurled himself at the panting figure, and they went down on the landing together, Coker on top, with a bump and a crash. Then there was a wild and whirling struggle in the dark, in the midst of which a door was heard to open, and a voice called out, "What is this noise? Who is that?" It was the boom of Mr. Prout, master of the Fifth. Coker gave a panting shout. "This way, sir, this way. I've caught Bunter." "What? Put on a light, sir." "Bless my soul." Then a light flashed on, illuminating the landing. Coker, with a sinewy knee planted on a wriggling, struggling form, stared across at Prout in a voluminous dressing gown and called, "I've got him!" And Mr. Prout, with an extraordinary expression on his face, stared at Coker. "Coker! I've got him, sir." "Are you mad, Coker?" "What are you doing to Mr. Quelch?" roared Prout. Coker had been looking at Prout. Now he looked down at his capture. It was not easy for Coker to believe his eyes when, for the first time, he saw who it was that he had caught in the dark. Not for a moment had he doubted, or dreamed of doubting, that it was that fat tick Bunter of the Remove. But it wasn't. Coker's sinewy knee was planted on Mr. Quelch, the master of the Remove. It was Mr. Quelch who was unable to speak, unable to do anything but gurgle and splutter. Coker gazed at him. It was Quelch, not Bunter, but Quelch. "Oh!" gasped Coker. He released his victim. He removed his sinewy knee, which had been squeezing the last ounce of wind out of the Remove master. He staggered to his feet. He backed away. "Quelch!" gasped Mr. Prout. "Oh, my dear fellow!" Mr. Quelch sat up on the floor. He gasped and gurgled for breath. Prout advanced and gave him a hand up. Slowly and painfully Mr. Quelch resumed the perpendicular. He leaned on the stout Prout. He mumbled. Oh, crikey," moaned Coker. "What are you doing out of your dormitory, Coker? And you, my dear Quelch, what—" I'm breathless. Breathless. Quelch was finding his voice at last. That insensate boy, that blockhead. Quelch, with an effort, pulled himself together a little. The glint in his eyes, as he looked at the dismayed Coker, was positively deadly. I came, Quelch tried to speak calmly, I came up to this landing from my study, Mr. Prout, to sit there on that settee in the dark to watch for that troublesome boy, Bunter, who, I have no doubt, will leave his hiding place in search of food during the night. Oh, gasped Coker. It had not occurred to Coker that anyone else might have guessed Bunter's probable tactics that night. And then, suddenly, that insensate boy sprang on me in the dark, gasped Quelch, like a tiger. Bless my soul. Oh, crumbs, moaned Coker. Unless he is insane, I cannot understand his action. Coker, what is the meaning of this? Thundered Prout. I thought it was that fat tick. I was watching for Bunter, sir. And for what reason, Coker, were you meddling in a matter with which you have no concern? Coker made no reply to that. It was not of much use to explain to Prout that he was constitutionally incapable of minding his own business. Upon my word, boomed Prout. Coker? No, I never meant... Silence, Mr. Quelch. I can only express my regret
my very deep regret that this boy of my form... Coker, you utterly, impenetrably stupid boy, you...
Words and breath seemed to fail Prout altogether. I was going to catch... Bunter.
Silence, Coker. Loath as I am to use the cane in a senior form, I shall certainly do so on this occasion.
But, I say, I was only...
Silence, Mr. Quelch. I express once more my deep regret. Coker, follow me downstairs immediately.
Prout swept like a thundercloud to the staircase. Coker feebly picked himself up from the settee and limply followed him. Quelch was left still gasping and spluttering on the study landing. Hello, cried Bob Cherry. The rising bell was ringing in the misty morning. The forms at Greyfriars were turning out at the clang of the bell. The lower fourth form turned out to the surprise of their lives. Up to a few days ago, a deep and resonant snore, to the accompaniment of the rising bell, had not been an unaccustomed sound in the removed dormitory. But of late Bunter had not been seen there, and his snore had not been heard. He had been both invisible and inaudible. And now... "Bunter!" gasped Harry Wharton.
"The esteemed and idiotic Bunter!" cried
Huree Jamset Ram Singh. Bunter's bed was no longer unoccupied. A fat head was on the pillow. 2 little round eyes were clamped shut. A mouth of considerable extent was open. The removed fellows gathered round that bed, staring at Bunter. Bunter had evidently been somewhere where there was food. There were smears of jam on the fat face on the pillow. Crumbs of cakes adhered to the smears of jam. Bunter had not gone supperless to bed. "Oh, gad," said Lord Mauleverer, "if a Pree looked in now—" "Or Quelch," grinned the bounder.
"They'd have him," said Bob Cherry.
"Better wake him up." Bob hooked back the bedclothes, grasped a fat shoulder, and shook.
Let go! Beast, 'tain't rising bell!"
"Wake up, you fat ass!" chuckled Bob. "Shake, shake, shake." Billy Bunter opened his eyes.
I say, you fellows, is that rising bell?"
"It is," said Bob. Bunter groped for his spectacles and jammed them on his fat little nose. Then he put a fat leg out of bed. Billy Bunter was generally a slow and late riser, but on this occasion he was quite brisk. Now that the school was astir, he realized that he'd better get back to his hideout in the shortest possible time. He bundled on clothes. As he did so, a tin of sardines dropped from one pocket and a stream of biscuits from another. Hello, whose sardines?" exclaimed Bob Cherry. "Whose biscuits?" grinned the bounder. Billy Bunter evidently had had supper in the removed studies. With an eye to the future, he had packed his pockets with as much as they would hold, rather more, in fact, for as he bundled on his clothes, more and more edibles dropped from them. As he clutched up the tin of sardines, biscuits shot from one pocket, a wedge of cake from another, and a bag of bullseyes from a third.
I say, Harry, old chap, squint into the passage and see if anybody's about before I cut,"
said Bunter. "OK," said the captain of the remove, and he crossed to the dormitory door, opened it, and glanced out. The next moment he jumped at the sight of an angular figure down the corridor. "Oh, my hat! Quelch!" Billy Bunter gave a squeak of alarm.
Oh, crikey! Is the beast coming here?"
"He's in the passage." "The game's up, old fat man," grinned the bounder. Quelch, at the moment, was standing in the corridor, staring at some small object on the floor. Wharton stared at it from the door and discerned that it was a biscuit. Then he understood. Glancing past Mr. Quelch, he spotted several more biscuits strewn along the passage, several bullseyes, and a chunk of cake. Quelch was following a trail. "Oh, scissors!" gasped the captain of the remove. Evidently, Billy Bunter, in the studies, had packed his pockets not wisely, but too well. He had left a trail behind him, and Quelch was on that trail. Mr. Quelch's tread was heard in the passage now. Apparently he'd made up his mind whither that trail led, and was coming on to the dormitory. Billy Bunter stood for a moment or two blinking like a scared owl. But his fat wits worked under the spur of peril. He made a jump and backed behind the open door of the dormitory. A moment more, and Mr. Quelch appeared in the doorway. He fixed a pair of gimlet eyes on the crowd of remove fellows in pyjamas.
"Bunter is here," he rapped. "I'm assured of it. He is here."
Mr. Quelch strode into the dormitory. Behind him the fat figure darted out from behind the door and shot into the passage.
"Bunter, why, what?
Mr. Quelch spun round just in time to see the fat figure vanish.
"Bunter, I command you to stop!"
Quelch, with billowing gown, swept out of the doorway in pursuit. The juniors crammed the doorway, staring down the passage. Bunter, heading for the landing, was going at about 60 mph, shedding biscuits, cake, apples, and all sorts of edibles from his pockets as he careered frantically on. Behind him rushed Quelch, also going strong. "He'll never get him," said the bounder. "Got him! No! Oh, my hat! Man down!" Indubitably Quelch would have got him had he not stumbled and slipped on a tin of sardines shed by the careering owl in his flight.
"This cannot continue, Mr. Quelch," said Dr. Locke.
Certainly not, sir."
"It is absolutely essential, Mr. Quelch, that the boy should be found without further delay."
Quelch agreed with the head, in principle, as it were. The present state of affairs was intolerable. Only the boy could not be found. Dr. Locke's face was very grave. Quelch's was grave also, with deep annoyance mingled with its gravity. Quelch, as the missing junior's form master, was really responsible. A boy in his form, whom he had been marching to his headmaster for judgment, had eluded him, and for whole days remained at large about the school, causing excitement, merriment, and general commotion.
"On Tuesday," resumed Dr. Locke, "this boy eluded you, Mr. Quelch. It is now Friday morning."
Mr. Quelch did not really need that information. He had a calendar in his own study. He made no reply.
"This cannot continue,"
repeated the head. Dr. Locke sat at his writing-table, on which he gently drummed with slim fingers. Mr. Quelch sat on a chair at that table, feeling a good deal like a culprit. It was, in fact, his duty to produce Bunter, and he could not produce Bunter.
"It is extraordinary," went on the head. "You do not think he has quitted the house, Mr. Quelch?"
"That is scarcely possible, sir, unobserved."
"He must be discovered, Mr. Quelch."
"Undoubtedly, sir."
The head drummed on the table again. He was at a loss. Quelch was at a loss. The fattest and most fatuous member of the Greyfriars community had, in fact, both of them beaten.
"Is it possible, Mr. Quelch, that he may have had the temerity, the audacity to conceal himself in some master's study?" said the head.
Mr. Quelch did not reply. He did not seem to hear. He was not looking at the head. His eyes had suddenly fixed on a spot on the head's carpet. He gazed at that spot as if it fascinated him. Dr. Locke glanced at him, puzzled and slightly irritated. He was accustomed to concentrated attention from members of his staff when he addressed them.
"Bless my soul!"
exclaimed Mr. Quelch.
"Really, Mr. Quelch!"
The head almost snapped. Still unheeding, Mr. Quelch rose to his feet and stepped towards that small spot on the carpet, which, after his eyes had once fallen upon it, had riveted his attention.
"Mr. Quelch!"
the head rapped.
"Will you have the goodness to explain—"
Look at this, sir."
A lean forefinger pointed at the spot on the carpet.
"I had not observed it at all, Mr. Quelch, and I fail to see any reason for giving it attention now."
"It is a squashed biscuit, sir."
A biscuit?"
"On which someone has trodden," said Mr. Quelch, "and trodden into the carpet recently. It must have been dropped since the maids were here this morning, or it would have been swept away."
"Undoubtedly," said the head. "I understand from Mrs. Kebble that the vacuum sweeper is out of action owing to some accident, and indeed I think she mentioned that a young man is coming from Courtfield this morning to repair it. But the carpet must have been attended to by other means, I imagine. If you are sure, Mr. Quelch, that it is a biscuit, then it must have been dropped here, Mr. Quelch."
"And recently, sir?"
Dr. Locke rose to his feet. There was a trace of excitement now in his scholarly face.
"Mr. Quelch, You mentioned that you traced that troublesome boy Bunter this morning by edible articles which he had dropped.
Precisely, sir.
The same thought was in both minds. It was one more sign in the trail of the vanished owl, and this time it was in the head's study.
"He has been here,"
breathed the head.
"He has been here,"
repeated Mr. Quelch like an echo.
"His headmaster's study. Oh, what audacity, what effrontery, what temerity! Mr. Quelch, can the boy still be here?" Dr. Locke almost gasped. "Is it possible, is it conceivable that the wretched boy may be at this very moment concealed in this very study?"
Mr. Quelch's jaw squared.
"That, sir, is what I propose immediately to ascertain."
Mr. Quelch ducked a tall head under the writing-table. He looked behind a bookcase. Then he twirled away a high-backed armchair that stood in a corner. And then...
"Oh, crikey!"
"Bunter!" almost shouted Mr. Quelch.
"Bunter!"
thundered the head.
"Oh, law!"
Hitherto hidden by the armchair was a fat figure crumpled in that confined space, and a pair of little round eyes blinked through a pair of big spectacles in terror at the two masters as they gazed at the elusive owl of the Remove, cornered at last. Bunter's game was up. For 3 whole days had the fat owl of the Remove dodged beaks, eluded prefects, postponed the headmaster's judgment. For 3 days and nights had his amazing antics lasted. But finis was written at last to the exciting odyssey of the fat and fatuous owl. The head's voice was deep.
"Bunter, now that you stand before me at last, I shall deal with you without delay. Mr. Quelch has acquainted me with all the circumstances. On Tuesday this week, you abstracted a postal order from his study."
"Well, I thought it was mine, sir. I thought it might have dropped out, and Mr. Quelch had picked it up and put it with the letter."
"Mr. Quelch was prepared to believe that you might have made so absurd an error, Bunter, making allowance for your stupidity."
"Oh, really, sir?"
"If you had returned the postal order. But you did not return it, Bunter. You admitted to Mr. Quelch at the door of this study that it was in your possession."
"He had hold of my shoulder, sir," wailed Bunter. "I'd have told him anything to make him let go, sir."
"Bless my soul."
"I hope you can take my word, sir."
The head gazed at Bunter. In the circumstances, he was not likely to take his word. The hapless owl had, in fact, tied himself up hopelessly in the net of his own prevarications. If there was any truth spotted among his innumerable fibs, the head was unable to sort it out.
"I cannot believe your assertion that the postal order was lost, Bunter, after your admission to your form master," said Dr. Locke.
"Well, the fact is, sir, that I never had it at all, sir."
"Did you say that you never had it at all?"
cried the head.
"Yes, sir. No, sir. It wasn't there when I went into Mr. Quelch's study."
"It was not there?" repeated the head, almost dazedly. You have just stated that you couldn't cash it because it was lost."
"Yes, sir. I couldn't cash it when it was lost, could I, sir? There was a jacket in my lining, sir."
"What?"
"I mean a lining in my jacket, sir.
What does this boy mean, Mr. Quelch?"
"I hardly know, sir."
"You have admitted that the postal order was in your hand, Bunter."
"Oh, no, sir. No, sir. It wasn't, sir."
"You have admitted it," thundered Dr. Locke.
It wasn't in my hand, sir. I should have been afraid of dropping it somewhere, sir. It was in my pocket, sir."
"Oh, grant me patience, Bunter. Bunter, you are so untruthful a boy that it is futile to question you, or to hear a word you say. You have abstracted a postal order for £1 from your form master's study. If you return it immediately, some credence may be given to your extraordinary explanation that you took it by mistake. If you do not return it, and at once, you will be expelled from the school for pilfering. Now."
"Oh, Jiminy!"
"That is my decision, Bunter. If you have nothing to say, Bunter..."
"Oh, Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It wasn't me, sir. I never cashed it, because it was lost through the pole in the hocket. I mean the jacket and the lining. And I never took it from Mr. Quelch's study at all. It wasn't there when I went to the study, and I never went to the study, sir.
That will do, Bunter.
Oh, thank you, sir. Can I go now?
You may go to your dormitory and pack your box. You will do so under Mr. Quelch's charge. You will then tap.
It was a tap at the study door. Dr. Locke glanced round. Mr. Quelch glanced round. Billy Bunter blinked round as the door opened, revealing the trim figure and rosy cheeks of Mary the housemaid. "If you please, sir," said Mary. Really, it was not a suitable moment for Mary to interrupt. Both the masters gazed at her expressively. Unperturbed, Mary came in.
"What is it, Mary?"
asked the head, somewhat testily. "It's Mr. Quelch, sir," said Mary stolidly. "Mrs. Cabell said I'd better see you at once about it, sir, as it's very important, she said. One of the young gentlemen, sir, being in trouble about it."
"Kindly explain yourself, Mary,"
said the head. "Yes, sir. It's about the Hoover, sir."
The Hoover?
repeated Mr. Quelch. "Yes, sir."
Are you interrupting Dr. Locke in order to tell me something about sweeping carpets, Mary?
"Yes, sir. Mrs. Cabell said it was important, sir, because Master Bunter was suspected, sir," said Mary calmly. It dawned upon the two masters that Mary's unexpected visit to the headmaster's study had something to do with the charge under which the fate of Bunter now hung in the balance.
"Bless my soul," said Dr. Locke. "Do you know anything about the occurrence in Mr. Quelch's study on Tuesday, Mary?"
"Yes, sir," answered Mary placidly.
"Then kindly tell me at once what you know of the matter, and you may speak to Mr. Quelch later about the vacuum sweeper."
"Oh, but that's it, sir. It's about the Hoover. The young man came from Courtfield this morning to repair the Hoover, sir. It was put out of order by Master Bunter falling on it."
Yes, Mary. Kindly keep to the point."
"Well, that is the point, sir. I was using the Hoover in Mr. Quelch's study that day, sir. That is how it happened."
How what happened?"
gasped Mr. Quelch. "It would have been found out that same evening, sir, if Master Bunter hadn't fallen on the Hoover and damaged the motor, sir. Because after the Hoover's been done with for the day, sir, I emptied the dust bag. But the Hoover being out of order, I did not empty the dust bag as usual, sir, but just left it when I wheeled the Hoover away and went to tell Mrs. Cabell what had happened."
"If you will try to make yourself clear, Mary,"
said Dr. Locke with the gentle patience he'd learned in 40 years as a schoolmaster. "Yes, sir. The young man came from Courtfield this morning, sir. He's just finished repairing the Hoover, sir."
Never mind the Hoover now, Mary.
"And of course, sir, as he was putting the Hoover in order, he emptied the dust bag, and everything I'd swept up in Mr. Quelch's study was in it, sir," explained Mary.
Yes, no doubt, but..."
"And when he found the postal order in it, sir..."
"What?"
"He handed it to Mrs. Cabell, sir."
He found a postal order?"
"Yes, sir, in the dust bag of the Hoover, sir. That was what I came to tell Mr. Quelch, sir."
"Bless my soul,"
said the head.
"Upon my word," said Mr. Quelch.
"Oh, crikey!"
gasped Billy Bunter. 3 pairs of eyes and 1 pair of spectacles were fixed quite eagerly on the placid face of Mary.
"Where is the postal order now?"
asked the head. "Here, sir." From a pocket of her apron, Mary produced a crumpled, dusty strip of paper. She laid it on the head's writing table. Dr. Locke gazed at it. Mr. Quelch gazed at it. Billy Bunter gazed at it with eyes that nearly popped through his spectacles. It was a postal order for £1. "I think it was very likely under Mr. Quelch's table, sir," went on Mary's placid voice, "among bits of waste paper." Mr. Quelch examined the postal order. It was intact, the counterfoil still attached, and plainly marked with the office of issue, Friardale, and the date. Mr. Quelch nodded.
This is the missing postal order, undoubtedly. That incredibly stupid boy must have dropped it in my study, though I hardly see how he could have dropped it under the table."
Bunter could have enlightened his form master on that point.
"But it is certainly the postal order," said Mr. Quelch.
"Thank you, Mary,"
said the head.
"Thank you for coming and telling me this."
"Yes, sir," said Mary. And Mary faded out of the study.
"Mr. Quelch,"
said the head at last.
"In view of this confirmation of Bunter's statement that the postal order was lost, I think we may give credence to his extraordinary explanation that he did actually take it from your study by mistake."
I think so, sir. Making allowances for the boy's stupidity.
"His very unusual stupidity," assented the head. "Bunter, in view of this, you are exonerated," said Dr. Locke. "I shall overlook, and your form master will kindly overlook, your extraordinary conduct during the past few days. You may go."
Break was almost over. Billy Bunter, supposed up to that moment to be hidden so deep that beaks and prefects could not get track of him, rolled out into full view of the whole school, large as life. Remove fellows and other fellows crowded up from all sides. Bunter grinned at them as they crowded up. The owl of the Remove was the cynosure of all eyes. "Bunter!" exclaimed Harry Wharton. "The absurd and preposterous Bunter!" cried Huree Jamset Ram Singh. "That fat tick Bunter!" exclaimed Coker of the Fifth. "Bunter, you fat ass!" exclaimed the Bounder. "What are you doing here?" "Can't before Quelch spots you," grinned Skinner. "Blow away, Bunter," warned Bob Cherry. Billy Bunter did not blow away. He grinned cheerfully at the encircling crowd. Bunter was no longer on the run.
"I say, you fellows," he squeaked. "It's all right. I've just been with the head."
"Bunked?" asked the Bounder.
"No, I jolly well ain't."
"Then what?" asked Harry Wharton. Bunter chuckled. Evidently he was in cheery spirits. His beaming countenance indicated that his trials and tribulations were over.
"You see, it's all right," said Bunter. "They found it."
"I say, who's found what?" asked Bob.
"That postal order,"
trilled Bunter triumphantly. "So they found that missing postal order?" asked Skinner.
"Yes, they jolly well have."
"But where did they find it, Bunter?" said Harry Wharton.
"In the Hoover."
"Well, my hat! And has Quelch got it now?" asked Johnny Bull.
"He jolly well has."
"Then you really had lost it?"
"I told you I had,"
hooted Bunter. "Oh, yes, I know that. But it seems that you really had, although you said you had."
"Ha ha ha ha!"
They all laughed.
"Oh, really, Bull?"
"So you're not going to be bunked after all?" asked Skinner.
"No jolly fear,"
said Bunter. "Well, gratters, old fat man," said Harry Wharton, laughing. "We're not going to lose our Bunter," said Bob Cherry. "There'd have been a lot of dry eyes if we had."
"It's all right now," said Bunter. "Quite all right. Except..."
"Except what?"
"Well, you see, as that postal order wasn't mine after all, and as my Uncle Carter isn't sending me a postal order till next week, according to his letter, I'm still stony, and,
Hello. Oh, there goes the bell.
Oh, blow the bell. I say, you fellows, who's going to lend me a quid till my postal order comes?"
There was no reply to that question. The bell was ringing for third school, and the fellows headed for the form rooms. Nobody, it seemed, was prepared to lend him £1 till his postal order came.
I say, you fellows!"
cried Bunter. But the fellows were gone, and Billy Bunter, with a snort, rolled after them to the Remove form room, once more to sit and absorb knowledge under a gimlet eye, and still expecting a postal order.